Chapter 239. The monkey-faced eagle was also known as monkey-faced bird and grass owl. It belonged to the category of birds of prey. In the food chain, it originally suppressed the pigeon king. In addition, it had a slight advantage in attack and defense. Its speed and strength were also better than the pigeon king. Therefore, when the monkey-faced eagle was summoned, White's pigeon king could only flee in panic. The pigeon king grabbed the red magic ball and dodged in the air. It was not the monkey-faced eagle's opponent at all. Its wings were scratched by the monkey-faced eagle's beak and claws again and again. However, when its magic value dropped to a certain level due to its injuries, a bright white ripple suddenly appeared on its body. Its original injuries recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its magic value was also replenished a little. This allowed it to successfully hold on until the end of the first round, and it was still circling around. White was constantly paying attention to the 30-second countdown, so he took out 2 new magic cards immediately. He bet his hope on these 2 magic cards. Remember in 1 second. https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP and the magic cards also responded to his expectations. Troll. When he saw the ugly but powerful troll on the card, White's heart instantly calmed down. It was a feeling of, with the troll in hand, the world is mine. The truth was so. In White's impression, the 3-eyed squid should be Sea Keat's strongest 3-star magic elf. With the power of the troll, there was no doubt that it would be crushed. This meant that it was a sure win game. The summoning speed would crush. The magic elf would crush. How could it lose? White only calculated in his heart and felt that it was a sure thing. Now, the only thing left was to summon the troll. The cooldown of the usual summoning had already been reset. He began to summon without hesitation. Fight for me, troll. The white light flew out from the card and landed in the summoning area. Card name, Troll. Type, Elf card. Level, ****. Race, Subhuman. Attribute, Normal. Magic power, 1200. Attack, 1500. Defense, 1400. Ultimate skill, Sacrificial Impact, Rage. A monster the size of a small mountain rose from the ground. The injured king pigeon immediately fled to the back of the giant monster. The monkey-faced eagle, who was in hot pursuit, was blocked by a giant monster. The giant monster roared and slapped at the monkey-faced eagle. Pum! The millstone-sized palm hit the bullseye. The monkey-faced eagle was directly smashed into specks of light. The monkey-faced eagle card in Sea Keat's hand immediately turned gray. His expression changed slightly as he placed the monkey-faced eagle magic card on the bottom left corner of the table. Monkey-faced eagle's defeat had caused him to lose his precious flying ability. Fortunately, the pigeon king's wings were severely injured, so it couldn't fly any higher. As for the healing skill it had displayed just now, the cooldown of healing skills had always been quite long. It was very difficult to use a second one in a duel, so it was basically negligible. What he needed to face now was a 3-star pinnacle giant monster. It was just a giant monster. If you really think that a single monster can make me helpless, then you've really underestimated me. Sea Keat muttered softly. He was a second-year student after all. Although he was previously addicted to resentment because of being brainwashed, it had been 2 months since the end of the goddess incident. In these 2 months, he didn't waste his time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have participated in this recruitment competition. His results were indeed not good, but he wasn't a fool. Why would he come here just to embarrass himself? After adding 2 new magic cards into his hand, Sea Keat began to cast his usual summoning skills smoothly. In the arena, the giant monster that killed the monkey-faced eagle was extremely excited. Its 2 thick arms beat its chest hard, showing off its strength to its heart's content. It was said that this was the habitual behavior of male giant monsters when they were courting females. Giant monster! White stopped the giant monster from continuing to show off. Then he pointed at the 3-eyed squid and shouted, "Crush it!" Roar! With a final roar, the giant monster charged toward the 3-eyed cuttlefish. It didn't use any skills. It didn't need any. Just the suppression of strength was enough for it to crush the three-eyed squid. The two sides met in the middle of the arena. The three-eyed squid faced the giant monster that was charging towards it. It suddenly pulled out a tentacle and whipped it fiercely. However, that tentacle was caught by the giant monster. Then, with a strong pull, the three-eyed squid's body tilted forward. It then laughed strangely and grabbed the tentacle with its other hand. Then, with both hands alternately pulling, it actually pulled the three-eyed squid in front of it. However, this behavior was extremely unwise. The three-eyed squid only raised its head and spat out pitch-black ink at the giant monster. The amount of ink was huge, and it smeared the giant monster's mouth and face. The giant monster couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then, it suddenly opened its eyes, and there was a bloody light in its eyes. Ao ao ao. It howled desperately. Its two giant arms reached in and grabbed the roots of the two squid tentacles. Then, it gathered its strength and pulled fiercely to both sides. Rip! One of the tentacles was forcibly pulled off by it. The broken tentacle directly turned into glowing stardust. The three-eyed squid let out a scream. However, with such a combination, time passed quickly. Keat shook the magic card in his hand forward. Suddenly, a mass of pitch-black ink fell from the sky and splashed onto the three-eyed squid's head. The giant monster was too close and was also stained by the mass of ink. The parts that were stained by the ink suddenly emitted white smoke after being corroded. The giant monster was in pain and subconsciously retreated. However, the three-eyed squid that was splashed with ink from top to bottom was not corroded at all. Instead, its body color became pure black because of the mass of ink. The giant monster instinctively took a step back instinctively. The three-eyed squid that was completely inked had gained a third eye at this moment. White had always thought that the third eye of the three-eyed squid was just a decoration. However, his understanding was finally completely shattered at this moment. The pitch-black light that burst out from the third eye directly shot through the giant monster's shoulder. The giant monster's left arm instantly drooped down. After a short delay, it suddenly let out a scream. The scream was so shrill that it pierced people's hearts. White's face changed dramatically. Outside the field, those who knew a little about Keat all had a look of disbelief. Even Dake was very shocked. Keat's operation this time directly subverted his understanding of this person. The ink that fell from the sky just now was obviously a special tool that was specially used on the three-eyed squid. The three-eyed squid that was dyed with black ink had obviously been strengthened. This kind of strengthening was probably from magic, attack, defense, and even the ultimate skill strengthening in all aspects. This was almost equivalent to evolution, or in other words, demonization. Professor Nini had just taught the definition of magical beast in the study of magical beasts. At that time, it was Luo Boat who gave a detailed scientific introduction. At first, magical beasts were just ordinary beasts, but they went through a transformation process called demonization. Not only did they gain magic, but they also had the means to release magic, which was the ultimate skill. From the performance, it was almost exactly the same as the three-eyed squid's inked. At this time, even if the three-eyed squid didn't have the standard strength of a second-tier magic elf, it was definitely much stronger than before. This could be seen from the fact that it could easily injure the giant monster. Keat actually had this move. Dake was never stingy with his praise for others. At least that, ink, made him feel a little surprised. And on the judging panel, Professor Fox had completely recovered from the previous duel between Dake and John. He looked at Professor Cheong-si with an upward gaze. Although he didn't actually teach Keat any knowledge about the ink, this didn't affect the fact that Keat was his student. But Professor Cheong-si was thinking about other things. Her gaze stayed on White's back, revealing a trace of worry. A person couldn't always face failure. White needed a hearty victory to complete the baptism. However, he was afraid that the current duel would not be able to go smoothly. Magic summoning. After White calmed down a little, he immediately summoned the mana recovery potion and smashed it on the giant monster. The giant monster's magic value recovered 100 points. But the mana recovery potion couldn't heal injuries. It only calmed down the giant monster's emotions temporarily. Pull away. White gave instructions loudly. The three-eyed squid's change was shocking. He didn't know how many times the ray released from the three-eyed squid's third eye could be released. Pulling away was the safest way. And the three-eyed squid's whole body was already wrapped in that ink. The ink was extremely corrosive. Just now, the giant monster was just touched by the ink that was sputtered out, and a large part of its skin was corroded. The pain would only stimulate the giant monster to go crazy. But the damage caused by the corrosion would continue to consume its magic power. Before figuring out the specific effect of the ink, White didn't want the giant monster to be in danger again. However, the enemy retreated, and he advanced. Keat saw the giant monster retreating under White's instructions. How could she not beat the dog when it was down? The three-eyed squid instantly shot out 3 dark tentacles, one of which directly wrapped around the giant monster's neck, and the other 2 wrapped around the giant monster's legs. The ink on the surface of the tentacles made the skin of the giant monster that came in contact with it corroded until smoke came out. It endured the pain and struggled desperately. The three-eyed squid wanted to directly pull its legs apart and make it lose its balance and fall. Of course, it couldn't do as it wished. With a loud roar, the troll forcibly stood firm on its feet, and the tentacle that was wrapped around its neck was grabbed by its right hand. With the three-eyed squid's original strength, it was impossible to compete with the giant monster. As long as the giant monster grabbed the tentacle and pulled hard, it could make the three-eyed squid lose its balance. But now, the tug of the 2 sides entered a tug of war. Obviously, after being inked, the three-eyed squid's attack power had increased to at least 1500, which was equivalent to the giant monster. From 1100 to 1500, a full 400 points increase. Relying on its only remaining right arm, the giant monster and the three-eyed squid engaged in a fierce battle. And in this gap, White summoned the magic elf card that was drawn together with the giant monster. She tried to order it to bypass the three-eyed squid and attack the blue magic ball. However, Keat only gave an order. The three-eyed cuttlefish retreated slightly, stretched out an extra tentacle, and crushed the mere 2-star magic elf into pieces. In the blink of an eye, the second round was over. Third round, draw cards. White's face changed slightly. His luck today didn't seem to be good. This time, he only drew 2 magic elf cards that were used to make up the numbers. But at this time, Keat couldn't help but reveal a look of ecstasy. Seeing that Keat had begun to use the usual summoning skill, White couldn't help but feel nervous. He looked down at the giant monster and the three-eyed squid on the field, gritted his teeth, and made a decision. Giant monster, sacrificial impact. Sacrificial impact was an extremely powerful sure-kill skill, but at the cost of half of one's maximum magic power, it was known as the 7 injuring fist of the 7 injuring fists. According to the giant monster's total magic power of 1200, after using sacrificial impact, a full 600 points would be deducted. And after suffering from the three-eyed squid's three-eyed ray, the giant monster didn't have much magic power left. If another 600 points were deducted, then it would really be left with only a sliver of health. But a sliver of health was a sliver of health. At least this three-eyed squid had to pay an equivalent price. Roar! The giant monster's eyes suddenly turned red after receiving the order. Its aura became ferocious and violent. Its body directly burst out with blood, and it fiercely slammed into the three-eyed squid. After the three-eyed squid was inked, it still couldn't change the flaw of its slow movement speed. It couldn't dodge at all, and could only take the giant monster's sacrificial impact head-on. With this collision, the three-eyed squid, whose attack and defense had been improved, was almost hit to the point of dissipation. Although the giant monster was also suffering, its internal magic power value didn't show from its appearance, and it was still ferocious. White looked at the three-eyed squid that had suffered a huge injury, and immediately ordered the giant monster to end it. But just as the giant monster was about to make a move, ink suddenly fell from the sky. The three-eyed squid fiercely let out a cry of joy, like a sweet rain. Then, the wounds on its body, especially the front lacerations, were healed at an extremely fast speed. The ink this time was obviously different from the ink last time. Not only did it have the effect of healing, but it was also likely to further increase the attributes of the three-eyed squid. It even opened its third eye again in front of the giant monster. White's face changed instantly on the red team's platform. The ink this time could even refresh the cooldown of the ultimate skill. It was too strong. Once hit by the black ray, the giant monster with only 200 magic power value would die on the spot. Pigeon King. The Pigeon King, who was holding the magic ball, understood its command. It immediately let go of the magic ball in its claws and swooped down toward the three-eyed squid. Its sharp beak stabbed its third eye. Show! The black ray shot out from the third eye. It directly evaporated the Pigeon King. But this ultimate skill also entered a long cool-down time again. White breathed a sigh of relief, and then gritted his teeth again. Berserk! Since the giant monster's skill bar acquired the ultimate skill Berserk, White rarely used it. Because Berserk meant that it was uncontrollable. It was the last desperate throw. But the current situation was too bad. The giant monster with only 200 magic power value could no longer resist the three-eyed squid's attack. If it didn't take the unexpected move, it was afraid that it wouldn't be able to survive this round. Roar! The giant monster that activated the Berserk skill on its own opened its bloody mouth, revealing a mouthful of jagged sharp fangs. Before it completely lost its mind, it pounced toward the three-eyed squid. The fourth round, draw a card. White stretched his hand to the top of the deck, and his heart was a little heavy. The giant monster after Berserk not only blocked the three-eyed squid, but it also took a big bite on its body. But in the end, it still ran out of magic power and died. White, who lost his giant monster backbone, could only pin his hopes on Luminous Python. Fortunately, he drew Luminous Python in this round. The other card was Taboo Love. Extreme misfortune turned to bliss. White's spirit was lifted in an instant. He took out Luminous Python on the spot and summoned it as quickly as possible. Card name, Luminous Python. Type, Elf card. Level, *****. Race, Reptile. Attribute, Light. Magic power, 1400. Attack, 1400. Defense, 1400. Ultimate skill, Divine Light. Divine Light. The moment the Luminous Python appeared, White shouted loudly. The Luminous Python suddenly raised its head, and from the snow-white gem on top of its head, a sacred and beautiful light suddenly bloomed. The whole field was illuminated by the white light. The three-eyed squid, which did not have much magic power left, melted like water under the illumination of this divine light. At this point in the battle, the core magic elves of both sides, the giant monster and the three-eyed squid, had all left the field. But White's field still had the Luminous Python in charge, and Sea Keat's field was empty. What a tough battle! White exhaled and immediately ordered the Luminous Python to attack the blue square magic ball. Before the competition, he did not think that Sea Keat could be so difficult to deal with. But now, he just wanted to end this duel as soon as possible. However, just as the Luminous Python crossed the dividing line, a magic elf appeared in the blue square's summoning area. Sea Keat did not give up. He had 3 inks with different effects in his deck, but unfortunately, the three-eyed squid was only one. In the end, it was seriously injured by the giant monster in the Berserk state, and was then taken away by the Luminous Python. But in addition to the three-eyed squid, he also had other magic elves. For example, the 3-star white board that he summoned at the moment. Card name, Cryptfox Roar. Type, Elf card. Level, *****. Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Ground. Magic power, 1000. Attack, 1100. Defense, 1400. Ultimate skill, None. The giant cryptfox Roar that lived in the crypt had shed all the hair on its body and evolved into tough scales. It was like a pangolin that covered its entire body except for its limbs and abdomen. This 3-star white card only had a decent defense value. But speaking of white cards, what was the difference between a magic elf with all its ultimate skills on cooldown and a white card? Under C. Keats' command, the Crypt Fox Roar and the Luminous Python were entangled in a fight. These two magic elves that were naturally at odds with each other gradually became more ferocious as the battle continued. White suppressed the urge to use taboo love at this moment and summoned a new magic elf. However, it didn't take long for Scott to summon a new magic elf. This time, both of them summoned 2-star white cards. Following closely behind the Crypt Fox Roar and the Luminous Python, they found a place to tussle. Then, the next one, and the next one. White's and C. Keats' deck composition was actually very similar. Other than a few magic cards or item cards, there were only two options: Magic Elf card and Magic Elf card. Most of the Magic Elven cards were there to fill the deck. Once the core Magic Elf was defeated, there would only be one useless card after another left. Therefore, when the Luminous Python and the Crypt Fox Roar lost their combat power in the fight to the death, both sides could only summon the magic elves that were regarded as useless cards, one by one. And because the useless cards were really useless, it would take a lot of effort to even perish together. Therefore, the curtains were drawn on a long and boring battle of the useless cards that had no maneuverability. White's and C. Keats' expressions changed from the initial seriousness to the final numbness. They could not say a word. The atmosphere was strange and awkward. The beginning was clearly quite intense and exciting. How did it suddenly turn into such a long and boring script? But there was no draw option in the duel. If one did not want to admit defeat, one could only place a piece one by one. In the end, no one knew how many rounds had passed. White only had the last magic elf, fantasy beast, stag, and taboo love left in her hands. C. Keats still had a 1-star magic elf card and ink in her hands. Both of their expressions changed and they broke free from their numbness. It was finally going to end. White immediately summoned fantasy beast, stag. It had been a long time since this primordial fantasy beast had appeared in his matches. The white stag emitted a faint glow as it stepped out of the light. It lightly stomped on the ground with its front foot. It was sacred and beautiful. Card name: Fantasy Beast, Stag. Type: Elf card. Level: Race: Bird Beast. Attribute: Light. Magic power: 100 Attack, 200 Defense, 100 Ultimate skill: Light of the Soul. He was slightly slower. C. Keats' magic elf was also summoned. It was a water monkey that White had seen before. Card name: Water Monkey. Type: Elf card. Level: Race: Bird Beast. Attribute: Water. Magic power: 300 Attack, 400 Defense, 100 Ultimate skill: Poison Finger, Water Spray. From the data on the interface, it was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. C. Keats knew about White's fantasy beast, so he knew that the stag stats were extremely low. When he summoned the water monkey, he was already confident of victory. However, White had forbidden love, and was also confident of victory. The two of them looked at each other at the same time. It was almost as if they were replicated in a mirror. They revealed a relieved and carefree smile. C. Keats' water monkey also burst out at that moment. The water monkey was only a 1-star, but it was extremely fast. Together with its long and sharp nails, it could easily kill and slit the opponent's throat with poison. However, White also knew about the water monkey. Therefore, when the water monkey moved, the white stag suddenly raised its head and released a light of the soul from its majestic horns. The water monkey was the first to be attacked and was forced to retreat by the light of the soul. White used this time to complete the activation of Forbidden Love. That little monkey instantly froze on the spot. The stag lowered its head. After accelerating, it pierced the water monkey's abdomen with its antlers. After the water monkey was completely killed, this extremely difficult battle finally came to an end. Even Scott, who had been defeated in the end, heaved a sigh of relief. The battle is over. Winner, White Gouda. The referee's tone seemed to become weak. There was scattered applause outside the arena. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, there was a series of applause. It was Luo Boat who was clapping. He won in the end, didn't he? Luo Boat clapped his hands hard. Is it over? Anna rubbed her eyes and raised her head from Dake's shoulder. There were still some tears at the corner of her mouth. She was indeed awakened by Luo Boat's clapping. It's over. As I expected, White won. Dake didn't say one thing. The result was the same, but the process was different. F***CK. The two professors at the judging panel were still a little hostile at the beginning of the battle. Now, they just wanted to quickly give the score. Professor Cheong Si silently raised his board. Red side, White, 6 points. Blue side, C. Keat, 6 points. Professor Fox was indeed old. He couldn't help but yawn a few times, but he still gave the score. Red side, 5 points. Blue side, 4 points. The fifth-year students were suffering unspeakably. Red side, 6 points. Blue side, 6 points. Professor Fox's score was indeed a little strict. Even though the battle had become a battle of scrap cards in the end, both contestants had their own shining points. As a first-year student, White's summoning speed was usually very fast. The quality of her cards wasn't bad, but she didn't have a tactical system. On the other hand, C. Keat's ink card was really creative. Her basic skills were terrible, and she didn't have a second-tier magic elven card. If she didn't work hard, she might not pass the second-year summoning exam. As for whether or not they could pass the dual club's recruitment, that would depend on their luck. After the 7th match, Dake couldn't help but close his eyes and rest for a while. Then, he looked at Saraswati's match. This top student from the School of Magic had clearly improved since the last competition, easily winning a duel with a second-year student. The entire first round of the recruitment competition lasted for more than an hour. Finally, it was time for the second round. Rose had been waiting in front of the bulletin board for a long time. After the new schedule was changed, she found the schedule for number 123 and number 666 and successfully escaped before the crowd surrounded her. Thanks to Luo C's foresight, Dake and Anna didn't have to worry about checking the schedule. They used this time to chat quietly. Dake, who had recovered his energy, was looking forward to his duel with the upperclassmen again. In the second round of the recruitment competition, Dake and Anna were still in Venue 1. They were in the second and fourth matches respectively. This meant that Dake would be able to fight again soon. He refreshed himself and said, "I'll go first this time." Anna said, "Next time, I'll definitely go first." Not far away, Owen, who was standing next to the Aristocratic History Research Society recruitment sign, looked at the three people on the bench again. A short student beside him could not help but raise his head and ask, "Owen, when are you going to move out?" Owen smiled calmly and said, "No rush, I'll go now." In fact, he was going to persuade Dake after his duel, but then he was attracted by the Hero's Son competition. After all, even though the Hero's Son, White Gouda, was not in the aristocratic house, he was still a descendant of the nobles. Who wouldn't want to recruit a Hero's Son to their society? When the two swords of the kingdom gathered, the Aristocratic History Research Society would be invincible. But he didn't expect that he would be so sleepy after watching. He didn't even have a chance to persuade Dake Dimming. As for the societies that he tried to persuade but were rejected, he thought that it was natural. In the whole Shang Malian, only the Aristocratic History Research Society was worthy of Dake Dimming. In short, he dragged it on until the break between the matches. There was no one around Dake and the other two, so it was a good time to persuade. No, recruit them. Owen tidied his golden bangs that he was proud of and strode forward. When he arrived, he deliberately turned to face Dake and bowed with the etiquette of the nobles. "Good afternoon, Dimming." Dake looked up and said, "Good afternoon, Senior." He didn't know where this came from. Owen introduced himself naturally. "We've met in the common room of the aristocratic garden. I'm Michael Owen, a third-year student, a member of the Aristocratic History Research Society." Aristocratic History Research Society? Dake only knew that there were many societies in the academy, but he didn't expect there to be such a society. Wouldn't it be better to just call it the History Research Society? They could study whatever history they wanted. Owen cleared his throat and prepared himself for a long speech. The History of Nobles Research Club focuses on the study of the rise and fall of royalty and nobles from ancient times to the present. Our goal is to learn from history and use it for the future. Every member of our society is a pillar of the kingdom's future. Wait, Dake interrupted him. So, Senior, you're here to recruit me into the Aristocratic History Research Society? Owen smiled mysteriously. That's right. As long as you join the Aristocratic History Research Society, you'll be at least a vice president. Of course, you'll officially join next year. Dake was surprised. Vice president directly? Owen said, yes. Your bloodline will bring you salt. Dake said, Owen immediately said, if you think vice president isn't enough, as long as you stay in the society for a year, you'll be the official president. I'm sure the current president will give up his position. Dake couldn't help but laugh. If I hadn't thought about it, I'd have been seduced by you. Owen immediately understood the meaning behind his words and was stunned. What do you mean? Dake sighed. The Aristocratic History Research Society does sound good, but I'm planning to start my own society next year, so I'm sorry. Of course, if you're interested in joining my society, I'll leave you a spot. Owen was silent. After a while, he asked again, has it been confirmed? Dake looked up. Of course. Owen shrugged. Then there's nothing I can do. But starting a new society isn't easy. If you change your mind at any time, you can come to me directly. The position of Vice President of the Aristocratic History Research Society will always be reserved for you. Dake said, thank you. Owen then turned and left. His fake smile suddenly turned into a ferocious look. But this expression changed very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was back to a smiling face. How was it? The short student asked casually when he saw him come back. Owen found a place to sit down and said with a smile, he said he's going to start his own society. The short student nodded. Sure enough, it's not that easy. But if he's going to start his own society, it means that he won't allow other societies to join before next year. We still have a chance, don't we? Owen said, of course there's still a chance, and it's very likely. Short student, ha ha ha. Owen, ha ha ha. Short student, ha your head. The short man jumped up abruptly and hit Owen's head with the folded paper fan. He spat. Is this how you do things? Owen, sorry, President. Short student, useless trash. 4 in 1 8,600 words. Monthly votes, recommendation votes. Blade. Good night. Chapter 240. Aristocratic History Research Society. After Owen left, Dake began to think carefully. Of course, he didn't really think that this society studied aristocratic history. He didn't know which family Owen was from, but he had never seen him before. Sigh. That's right. Ever since the Valkyrie became the head of the family, the Dimming family rarely pretended to be polite. Even if they had interacted before, he might not remember. In the blink of an eye, Doc turned his attention back to the recruitment competition. The first match was actually a duel between 2 third-year seniors. Although they were far from being outstanding among their peers, their 2.5 years of study had given them the strength that matched the accumulation of time. Website: https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP. It was a rather exciting duel. Dake gave his evaluation. Then, he stood up anxiously. It's my turn. I wonder who my opponent will be this time. If it's on the same level as these two seniors, I can enjoy myself a little more. No matter who it was, after putting in a lot of effort, they needed to receive positive feedback. Just like the little red flower reward and punishment system that Dake set for the magic elves, positive feedback would promote some of the magic elves' independent efforts. Being able to enjoy bliss in the duel was the positive feedback he chose for himself. There was no doubt. He found new joy in the duel. It's his turn again. Professor Fox, who was on the judging panel, subconsciously sat up straight. Comparison was comparison. Competition was competition. In any case, Dake Dimeng was the little guy with the most potential that he found in this recruitment competition. The last round ended too quickly, and there were still many things that he didn't see clearly. This time, he had to watch carefully. Professor Cheong-si, who was sitting next to him, smiled slightly. Some people's life trajectory was far ahead from the start. It was an honor to be able to walk with them before they showed their talents, not to mention as a teacher. Although she didn't come to the Shang Malian on her own initiative, every time she saw the little mages grow quickly under her guidance, her sense of identity as a teacher gradually grew stronger. I wonder how many more surprises he can bring us? On the other side, Angelia put down Claire's weekly travel notes and walked to Venue 1 after being reminded by her classmates. Some time ago, there was a strange trend in Travelers Street. Both the old and new bookstores were doing something called Christmas Collector's Edition, and the price directly doubled. However, there were people who were willing to take the bait. Angelia spent all her savings to fill up the bookshelf and exclaimed, "How nice!" As a matter of fact, the matter of joining the duel club, which was originally just a matter of words, was now on the agenda. 2 more duels, it's almost time. Angelia, who really thought that the duel was troublesome, quickly walked to the edge of the arena. He didn't look to the other side and directly went to the red team's platform. At this moment, Dake had already reached the stairs leading to the blue team's stage. He noticed that the red team contestant had already arrived, so he subconsciously looked over and was instantly delighted. He's here. In today's recruitment competition, Angelia was the biggest shark. Senior Angelia had short hair that draped over her shoulders, but her bangs were especially long. She gave off a very low-key and quiet feeling. However, her duel style was very different from her appearance. This could be seen from the duel between her and AI Ma. She could be called a rookie shark. Facing such an opponent, even Dake didn't have the confidence to win. However, duelists played with this kind of heartbeat. Crushing the opponent without any suspense was indeed delightful. However, the excitement and stimulation of turning the tables in an adverse situation was also wonderful. After all, this was a duel. Dake felt that he seemed to have found the state of mind when he played card games in the past. He walked up to the contestant platform and smiled mysteriously at Senior Angelia, who was next to him. His smile made Senior Angelia confused. Equals. As the 2 contestants entered the arena, there were suddenly many spectators outside the arena. The students who had come to watch the fun were keenly aware of the atmosphere here and gathered one by one. Isn't that Angelia? The third-year students of the House of Fools sighed when they saw Angelia on the red team's platform. Angelia had finally realized her mistake and turned back. From now on, the third-year House of Fools had another combat power. Whether it was in the competition for the year championship or the school championship, they would be more relaxed. As for the unlucky guy who dueled with Angelia, wasn't that the first-year student who was in the limelight last semester? He seemed to be the winner of the Crimson Star, so he should have some strength. However, he was only a first-year student after all. A first-year student who didn't even know how to conduct magic across space. Although Angelia didn't have much duel experience, nor did she have any in-depth research in this area, with her strength, the probability of losing was almost 0. It was nothing more than crushing victory, and winning in a roundabout way. That was what everyone believed. Both contestants, please get ready. The referee reminded them with a whistle. On the platform, Dake and Angelia each placed an entire deck of cards in the card slot at the bottom right corner of the table. Dake made meticulous adjustments to his deck, deleting some useless magic cards and only keeping a total of 20 magic cards with the Magic Elf and the Great Sin card as the main axis. Since Angelia was going for the quick draw route, it was time to see who was faster. Angelia obviously didn't think too much, she probably just wanted to end it quickly. Therefore, the exchange segment was directly skipped. The match entered the 30-second countdown of the preparation stage. Both contestants changed their states at the same time and reached out to draw cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 magic cards. Dake only needed to switch the cards from his right hand to his left hand and quickly spread them out in a fan shape. Bliss 3, Fantasy Beast, Ibu, Pride 2, Old, Fantasy Beast, Ever-Changing, Fairy Ibu, Bliss 3 is starting? Dake's heart skipped a beat. In his current deck, Bliss 3 actually occupied a very important position. Whether it was Ibu, the little demons, or the ever-changing monsters, they could all be improved by leaps and bounds through Bliss 3. This was a way to bypass the sacrificial summoning, which was also the so-called quick draw type. The most common tactic in the magician duel was quick draw. If one could summon a strong enough magic elf in the first round, they would be able to violently end the match. Instead of waiting for the opponent to draw more magic cards that could turn the tide of the battle. In the world of martial arts, only speed is unbeatable. Even if it was here, it would still work. As long as you were fast enough, you would be able to seize all opportunities. Why was the Spirit Magician faction unique? Wasn't it because they were fast enough? Dake shifted his attention to the other 4 magic cards. Ibu, Ever-Changing Monster. Shall I choose one of the 2? Battle Stage. 30s. Tick. It's you, Ibu. Almost at the same time as Angelia's magic elf was summoned, Fantasy Beast, Ibu, in Dake's hand lit up. The summoning speed of both sides was only half a second apart. But this half a second decided who would be first. As expected, Angelia's first magic card was still that bookworm. Because he had watched AI Ma's match, Dake was already mentally prepared. He calmed himself down and let Ibu condense in front of the blue magic ball. As soon as the bookworm appeared, it flapped its wings and swooped down like an eagle. Almost immediately, it crossed the distance of 30 meters and fiercely pecked at the blue magic ball. This peck obviously had traces of a skill, and it was a skill with fixed damage. The magic value of the blue magic ball directly decreased by 100 points. 20001900, squeak. Little Ibu, who was startled, subconsciously covered its head and used its ultimate skill, Crouch while holding head. The effect of crouch while holding head was very obvious. Ibu's presence was reduced to 0. The bookworm completely ignored it. After pecking, it turned around and flew back to the red summoning area. Outside the arena, AI Ma Métis frowned slightly and watched carefully. She really wanted to know how Dake would deal with the same situation. Would he use that golden kettle? Or something else? AI Ma's gaze moved to little Ibu. She remembered very clearly that Dake had summoned this fantasy beast in the last class competition and used a special magic card to transform it into a second-tier magic elf. But after the evolution, the elf was completely out of control. Although it broke the Sphinx's shadow stomp, it ran out of the arena on its own. Perhaps that was a problem caused by the high intelligence of the elf? AI Ma was a little envious. But an uncontrolled elf was useless in a real battle. The first round of a magic duel was the most basic test of one's ability. Duelists would be especially focused during this half a minute, and they would be able to unleash their best state. Every minute and second was calculated with precision. Angelia's bookworm used its ultimate skill, Worm Suck, and absorbed 100 points of magic from the blue magic ball's life enchantment. Then, it borrowed the 100 points of magic power and successfully triggered another core skill, Infinite Library. Under the effect of Infinite Library, the bookworm created a replica with 100 points of magic. The replica had 100 points of magic, 0 attack and 0 defense, but 2 stars. It could be sacrificed. Sacrificing 2 2-star magic guide fairies could summon a 4-star magic guide fairy. After the cooldown of the summoning spell was over, Angelia began to prepare for the sacrificial summoning spell. Once the bookworm had created a duplicate, she immediately performed the second half of the sacrificial summoning spell. Following the successful use of the sacrificial summoning spell, a blazing white light shot out from the magic card in her hand to the ground. The bookworm and its replica turned into light at the same time and merged with the white light from the magic card, forming a complicated and mysterious sacrificial summoning spell. From the sacrificial summoning array, another 4-star magical guide sprite emerged. It's not the same one. AI Ma was a little worried outside the arena. She felt a little anxious about the fact that she didn't have a 4-star magic elf. But the corner of her eye twitched, and she suddenly noticed that the magic beast in the blue summoning area had completed the ultimate transformation. No, the transformation had already been completed before Angelia's 4-star magic guide fairy was summoned. Dake is faster than Angelia. AI Ma's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately realized that the transformed magic elf wasn't Moon Ibu, who had appeared in the class competition. It was Fairy Ibu, who was pink and cute. Heart suit, Ibu was very satisfied with its own evolution. Compared to the out-of-control Moon Ibu, Fairy Ibu's evolved form was what it wanted. A pink appearance that suited a young girl's heart, a skin that was smoother than that stinky thing at home that bullied it because of its evolved form, and a ribbon that was even cuter. In short, every part of it was cuter than that. As it thought about it, Fairy Ibu suddenly puffed up its cheeks, feeling angry. Why did it need the help of the Great Sin card to evolve? If it studied diligently, would it be able to change this situation? Card name, Magic Beast, Fairy Ibu. Type, Elf card. Level, *******. Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Fairy. Magic power, 1900. Attack, 1700. Defense, 1300. Ultimate skills, Fairy Skin, Deafening Sound, Destructive Ray, Cough. Sensing that its darling's mind seemed to have drifted outside the arena, Dake hurriedly coughed as a reminder. Fairy Ibu abruptly focused and saw that the opposing magic guide fairy had already pounced over. It was a magic guide fairy in the shape of a lion, but it wore a pure white mask on its face, revealing only its eyes, nostrils, and a finger-wide slit in its mouth. As the king of the forest, the lion's teeth and claws were its most powerful weapons. But the mask sealed its fangs. This made it less domineering, but more sinister. Continuing Angelia's usual style, this face-changing lion was extremely fast. In the time it took to be distracted, it had already arrived in front of it. But Fairy Ibu suddenly took a step forward, its small mouth suddenly cracking open, and then an extremely terrifying roar came out. Roar. Originally, the roar of the forest should have been the Lion King's play, but now the two characters had switched roles. Fairy Evie's thunderous voice boomed out, even affecting the duel next door. The entire stadium reverberated with the sound. The spectators closer to the arena hurriedly covered their ears, but the sound still lingered in their ears. The vibrations in the air that accompanied the loud roar made the face-changing lion's fur shake. Its pouncing body suddenly froze, and then it was violently blown away. Its magic power plummeted. The face-changing lion rolled a few times on the ground before standing up again, the mask on its face suddenly turning yellow. An angry and irritable aura suddenly spread out. 2 in 1. 4,100 words. In the last 30 hours of October, I wrote 25,000 words. I haven't recovered yet. After eating, I'll write another chapter today to make up for yesterday's. Begging for votes. Chapter 241. Card name, Face-Changing Lion. Type, Sprite card. Level, ********. Race, Bird/Beast. Attribute, Normal. Magic power, 1500. Attack, 1500. Defense, 1500. Ultimate skill, face-changing, white, black, yellow, red. On the red team's platform. Remember the URL. M. Vipkanshu. VIP Angelia held the magic card in her hand, a trace of astonishment in her eyes. Dake's summoning speed had already surprised her, but what surprised her even more was the extraordinary method of turning a first-tier magic guide sprite into a second-tier magic guide sprite. I actually lost in the summoning of a 4-star magic guide sprite, she muttered to herself, and then a faint smile appeared on her face. Interesting. Ever since the second year, when there were no more in-class competitions in the dueling class, Angelia had almost never participated in duels. She hadn't felt this way for a year and a half. But there was a price to pay to arouse her interest. Face-changing lion, yellow face. She gave the order. The face-changing lion's mask instantly turned from white to yellow. Its relatively slender limbs also suddenly swelled a little, especially its 4 lion claws, which even grew blade-like sharp claws. Visible to the naked eye, the face-changing lion's attack power increased by a whole 300. Attack: 1,500, 1,800. White face was cunning, increasing its speed. Yellow face was irritable, increasing its attack power. From white face to yellow face, the face-changing lion's speed returned to normal, but its attack power increased. It leaned forward fiercely, its 2 claws clawing the ground, boiling with anger. Then, it once again pounced toward Fairy Ivan. At this time, the face-changing lion's basic attack power was already higher than Fairy Ivan's. In addition to its lion body and sharp claws, once it got into close combat, it would definitely have the upper hand. But just to be safe, Angelia still pulled out another card from her hand, ready to attack at any time. It was time to get serious. The face-changing lion on the field seemed to have sensed her thoughts, and its natural ferocious aura grew stronger and stronger. When it got close to Fairy Ivan, its 4 limbs exerted force, and it pounced forward with a low roar. But Fairy Ivan, who had been waiting for a long time, was already ready to attack. Death Ray of Destruction. Doc's soft voice rang out immediately after. Fairy Ibu opened her mouth once more, but this time, what came out of her mouth was no longer a loud sound, but a terrifying white light emitting an aura of destruction. All he could see was a vast expanse of whiteness. Countless rays of light were being absorbed and gathered, forming a white ball of light in its mouth. The ball of light instantly turned into a beam of light and shot out. Boom! The face-changing lion did not even have time to react before it was struck in the face by the deathly ray of destruction. There was almost no pause as the deathly ray of destruction engulfed it from head to toe. When the afterglow of the light dissipated, there was a sudden burst of cheers outside the arena. Meanwhile, the face-changing lion had completely turned into specks of light. It was also a 4-star magic guide sprite. But at this moment, the absolute gap between the 2 sides was revealed. Fairy Ibu, who hadn't moved a single step from the moment she was summoned, had only expended enough magic power to use 2 skills to completely vaporize the face-changing lion, which was also a 4-star magic guide fairy. Me. But after Fairy Ibu achieved this feat, her smile was very forced. Because her entire body was very stiff, having entered the abnormal state after using the deathly ray of destruction. She would not be able to move for the next round. Angelia, who was on the red team's platform, keenly captured this detail, and immediately activated the magic guide card she had prepared earlier. A shadow suddenly appeared where the face-changing lion had disappeared. From the shadow, a creature stirred. A pitch-black face-changing lion with a yellow mask unexpectedly raised its upper body from the shadow. What is this? Dake, who was on the blue team's platform, had an astonished expression, and the sacrificial summoning spell he had been preparing was almost interrupted. That shadow had originally been very close to Fairy Ibu. At this moment, that shadow-like face-changing lion had drilled out of the shadow and pounced onto Fairy Ibu's body with a single leap, raising its sharp claws high up and fiercely clawing at her chest. Fairy Ibu's entire body was stiff, and could only allow the face-changing lion to leave an extremely deep claw mark on her chest. Fortunately, Fairy Ibu's maximum magic power was as high as 1900, and her defense was not weak, so she was not torn to shreds on the spot. Immediately after, a white light descended from the sky. Fairy Ibu, whose entire body was stiff, finally revealed a trace of extreme unwillingness and annoyance, before transforming into light and fusing with a white light descending from the sky. Using Magical Fantasy Beast, Fairy Ibu, as sacrifice, sacrificial summoning, Fairy Ibu. Dake, who had calmed down, completed the operation of a nesting doll. In midair, 2 white lights intersected and fused, forming a mysterious and complicated sacrificial summoning spell. And a brand new magic guide fairy, Fairy Ibu, who was exactly the same as the previous one, gracefully entered the stage. It's here again. Angelia covered her forehead with her hand. Looks like this type of magic guide fairy's magic power and defense are higher than what they look like on the surface. Otherwise, a magic guide fairy with less than 50% magic power remaining can't be used as a sacrifice to summon a magic guide fairy of the same star rank. Using a magic guide fairy of the same star rank as a sacrifice to summon a magic guide fairy of the same star rank, the main purpose of this nesting doll operation should be to eliminate unsolvable negative effects, or to refresh the cooldown of a skill. And the price to pay for this was a magic guide fairy of the same star rank that still had complete battle power. The pros and cons of this had to be weighed by the duelists themselves. She then glanced at the secret ritual card that had just been activated. Da Vinci's photocopy. What appeared on the surface of the card was a book that had sunk into the shadows. The famous archmage of dragon eggs, Da Vinci, had drawn thousands upon thousands of dragon eggs in order to study them. In the end, he accidentally shattered a dragon egg, and used a projection spell to imprint the dragon egg in his memory onto the book, finally escaping from the endless hell of drawing dragon eggs. The secret ritual card that had been refined based on this legend was the Da Vinci's photocopy. When the marked magic guide fairy died, it could summon a shadow that was exactly the same as the dead magic guide fairy from the shadows. This was actually a type of special summon. Skipping the summoning and sacrifice, using the secret ritual card to specially summon a new magic guide fairy. It was a pity that the opponent also had a countermeasure, thus losing the possibility of a surprise victory. Angelia frowned slightly, and reached out to touch the deck. The first round had already passed, and the second round had just begun. Battle stage, 30s. At the same time that the two contestants were touching the cards, the two magic guide fairies on the field had already begun to fight. Fairy Ivan, who had just been summoned, didn't even have time to show off his cute satin ribbon before he was pounced on by the face-changing lion. Me. Fairy Ivan immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. His two satin ribbon antennae instantly pulled out and coiled around the face-changing lion's forelimbs like snakes, pulling it back and breaking free. Fairy Ivan shook his head, and was just about to use Moon Force to severely punish this lion, when he suddenly discovered that the lion's eyes had already appeared with the symbol heart suit. Me. The intimate contact between the two had actually triggered the effect of Body of Charm. This face-changing lion had clearly already been charmed by the extremely lovable Fairy Ivan. The corner of Fairy Ivan's mouth suddenly curled up, and he suddenly took a small step to the side, jumping a distance away. Then, he looked at the lonely magic guide ball floating in the red team's summoning area with great interest. It was only a duel. There was no need to be too violent, right? As long as he charmed the opponent's magic guide fairy, and then broke the magic guide ball's life barrier, he would be able to receive hugs, kisses, and stickers. Oh, and a little red flower. On the red team's platform, Angelia was still looking at the two cards she had just drawn when she suddenly noticed that something was wrong with the situation on the field from the corner of her eye. She abruptly turned her head and discovered that the face-changing lion was hanging motionlessly, and that pink magic guide fairy was actually facing the magic guide ball with its mouth wide open. Suddenly, moonlight sprinkled down from the sky. Pure and bright moonlight rapidly converged in its mouth, condensing into a ball. At this moment, Angelia suddenly felt an ominous premonition. Her cerebral cortex went numb, and she almost subconsciously pointed her finger. All the magic in her body immediately flowed into her fingertips, and she shot it at the magic guide ball below. Almost at the same time, the light beam of Moon Force shot out. Angelia suddenly hooked her hand in a panic. That red magic guide ball instantly flew up. But in the time it took for its speed to increase from 0 to normal, the pure moonlight beam had already shot out. Cracks appeared on the magic guide ball's life barrier at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its magic value rapidly decreased. But at the last moment, it finally escaped the attack range of Moon Force. Whoosh! The magic guide ball that flew up dimmed, as if it would shatter at any moment. Angelia was sweating all over. She, who lacked experience in duels, was still too slow to react to such a sudden move. But in the end, she didn't die because of it. The spectators outside the arena were all cheering because of this sudden provocation. Fairy Ivan, however, puffed up its cheeks, showing a trace of dissatisfaction. It wasn't like Fairy Ivan, which evolved from Little Ivan, which had two powerful skills. Among its three skills, only Moon Force had a higher power. After this move, only the weaker, bewitching voice was left. If it wanted to continue fighting, it would have to use its claws and teeth. But how could such a cute and elegant magic guide fairy use its claws and teeth to kill? Fairy Ivan fiercely shook its head, and used its ribbon to bind the face-changing lion even more tightly. Then it turned around, and with its head facing the ground, it fiercely hammered the ground. Face-changing lion, red face. The face-changing lion in the bewitching state instantly changed its face. Its originally yellow mask turned red. Red face loyal straight. Defense increased. Defense 1,500–1,800. As its skull hardened, the sound of its head hitting the ground became even crisper. Boom! Dake, who was on the blue platform, revealed a surprised expression. It can still change its face under the bewitching state? Could it be that the mask is an agitated prop? It can even change according to the Archmage's voice? Before he could think further, Angelia on the opposite side had already issued the next order. Face-changing lion, black face. Black face fierce wit. Magic power increased. The face mask that had just turned red was immediately dyed black. Under the stimulation of various aspects, the face-changing lion finally broke free from the bewitching state. But the face-changing lion, whose attack, defense, and speed had all returned to normal, was like a big cat that had completely lost its fangs. It struggled with all its might, but it couldn't break free from the ribbon's restraint, and was smashed again and again like a hammer. However, Angelia's goal of stalling for time had already been achieved. She stretched out her hand and pulled out a new magic card from her hand. Normal summon, exquisite ball. Accompanied by a burst of white light, an exquisitely carved metal ball appeared in the air. Then it opened its mouth and bit, swallowing the dim red magic guide ball into its body. Card name, exquisite ball. Type, fairy card. Level, ****. Race, machine. Attribute, steel. Magic power, 700. Attack, 0. Defense, 2000. Ultimate skill, none. 3-star machine, steel, silver, exquisite ball. At the cost of 0 attack, it was exchanged for 2000 defense, surpassing the ordinary white card. However, sorcerers who had some understanding of the exquisite ball would realize that Angelia's exquisite ball was also a special individual. Under normal circumstances, the exquisite ball was only the size of a bowl, and it was impossible to fit a magic guide ball. However, Angelia's exquisite ball had a diameter of 2 meters. With this size, not to mention a magic guide ball, it was more than enough to fit 2 people. Its flaw was probably the hollowness on the surface. The surface that was not completely sealed caused its protective ability to be lacking. However, in the duel competition, the exquisite ball's advantage of being able to move the magic guide ball in the air was another plus point. In short, after summoning the exquisite orb, Angelia was able to divert his attention to other things and focus more on attacking. She glanced at the remaining 3 magic guide cards in her hand and sighed slightly. This duel took longer than she had expected. On the other side, Dake also had 2 new cards in his hand. Curse Cage, Little Evil Magical Beast. Greed 2. The moment he saw the cards in his hand, Dake's heart sank. These 2 magic guide cards could not bring about any substantial changes. Now, his combat power was only left with Fairy Ibu in the arena. If Angelia made another move, it would be difficult for him to deal with it. Let's summon the little evil magical beast first. With one more magic guide spirit, there would be more possibilities. Dake directly summoned the little evil magical beast in the air above the summoning area. The little evil magical beast, who was entering the arena for the second time, looked back at Dake eagerly, indicating that it did not want to slack off. Dake grinned and asked, "Then can your needle be small enough to pass through the gaps of the exquisite ball?" 2 in 1. 4,000 words. Mine, redefined today. Chapter 242. Of course, the little demon's needle could pass through the gaps in the dainty ball, but its needle could not. Hence, it glanced at the dainty ball's hollow carvings and could only fly downwards dejectedly. In a short while, it landed on the blue magic conducting ball. Then, it simply sat on the magic conducting ball and started to think about life. Sigh, the life of a sidekick is so boring. Following the death of the shadow-changing face lion by Fairy Ibu, the second round fell into a stalemate. Angelia did not do anything after summoning the dainty ball, obviously waiting for the third round to draw cards. Although Fairy Ibu still had the long-range skill, Bewitching Voice was completely ineffective against non-living creatures without hearing, so it could not be used to attack the magic conducting ball. The little demon's needle was too thick and could not pass through the gaps in the dainty ball, so it could only sit. Oh, it lay down. Fairy Ibu, who had killed the shadow-changing face lion, lightly hummed a song with a relaxed expression. In any case, it was not panicking. However, the expressions of these two magic-conducting fairies were too vivid. Remember, https://m Vipkanchu. VIP. Most of the first-year students were used to the high intelligence of these magic-conducting fairies, but the eyes of the upperclassmen who occasionally came to take a look were twitching. On the judging panel, Professor Fox's mouth twitched. He finally understood why Professor Cheong-si thought so highly of this Valkyrie's son. When the second round was about to end, Dake stared at the two Great Sins 2 cards carefully, but in the end, he did not activate them. Using any Great Sins 2 card could turn the little demon from a 1-star to a 2-star, but among his remaining magic-conducting fairies, most of them were 3-star and 4-star. If he could not use it to summon a 4-star magic-conducting fairy because it became a 2-star magic-conducting fairy, then he would be asking for trouble. Therefore, waiting for the third round to draw a new magic-conducting card before making a choice was a more conservative choice. Dake, who had already placed his finger on the deck, immediately drew 2 new magic-conducting cards the moment the round changed. Trash Slime, Diru Beast, Woo. Dake's eyebrows twitched, and he immediately activated Pride 2, Old. His reaction was faster than Angelia's, and this time, he activated it faster. The dark golden ball of light that flew out from the card surface drilled into the head of the little devil beast in the blink of an eye. The little fiendish beast lying on the blue magic conducting ball suddenly glared and jumped up. The pride emblem on his forehead flickered with red light. My little... woo-woo. The little demonic beast hurriedly covered its mouth, and then felt a trace of humiliation towards its conditioned reflex. He could not reveal that he could speak in front of outsiders. This order had become a conditioned reflex. It raised its head abruptly, and an almost tangible arrogance overflowed from its eyes. With a flap of its wings, it flew towards the exquisite ball in the sky. Oh, greater than over equal to Chu. Oh, today, I, the little demon beast, will single-handedly obtain victory and prove who is the true king. Come back. An indifferent voice suddenly came from the back of its head, causing the little demonic beast's body to stiffen. Then, it revealed an aggrieved expression, but it was immediately replaced by stubbornness. However, no matter how stubborn its expression was, it could not betray the honesty of its body. The enchanted fairy couldn't go against its master's orders. So, it could only return obediently. But at this moment, Angelia finally summoned a new enchanted fairy. It's over. Angelia, who had completed the summoning, let out a low groan. The way she waved the enchanted card was as if she was controlling a baton. In the sky, a pleasant melody suddenly sounded. Du rue mi fa sua la shi duo. One by one, the enchanted fairies jumped out of the enchanted card and danced in the air along with the waves of the melody. Those were the musical fairies, the legendary fairy choir. An orchestra composed of 7 fairies. Card name, Fairy Choir. Type, Fairy Card. Level, ****. Race, Fairy Species. Attribute, Fairy Type. Magic Power, 700. Attack, 700. Defense, 700. Ultimate Skill, Chime, Chorus. Fairy and Little Fairy had a difference of 1 word, but they were creatures of 2 different lineages. Little fairies belonged to the subhuman species, more inclined towards humans. Fairies, on the other hand, were fantasy species, an even more inhuman existence. Legend had it that little fairies were hybrids of fairies, humans, and fairies. But that was only a legend, because no one could verify it. The 7 fairies of the fairy choir were each less than half a human's height. They wore strange clothes that showed their individuality and strangely shaped hats. Their heads took up 1/2 of their height. Big heads, big brains, pointy ears, and hooked noses. After looking at them for a long time, they looked a little ugly. After they were summoned, they held hands and danced around the exquisite ball. Of course, that was not the prelude to the ultimate skill, but just a pattern of behavior. As a 3-star enchanted fairy, the fairy choir was a whole. If one fell, all would fall, and if one rose, all would rise. Dake had a little understanding of this type of enchanted fairy. He knew that they were very rare and precious. For example, this fairy choir only had 700 points in magic attack and defense, but with 7 fairies, it could deal a total of 4,900 points of damage to the Arcanite ball when the opponent wasn't defending against it. This would be very useful at certain times. Of course, the weakness of this type of enchanted fairy was also very obvious. Their 3 sizes were generally not high, so it was very difficult to break through the defense of an enchanted fairy that had 3 sizes higher. In essence, they were not very threatening enchanted fairies. However, when this fairy choir appeared in Senior Sister Angelia's hands, Doc had an ominous premonition. He looked on with some worry, but his own rhythm did not slow down. After the cooldown of the usual summoning spell was over, he immediately summoned the trash slime. The little trash slime landed on the blue square enchanted ball with a plop. Then, it raised its head slightly and stared at the fairy choir in the air together with Fairy Ivan. Watching them dance and sing rap, it was very uncomfortable. Fairy Ivan had already changed the tune of the music floating in the air, and continued to hum. Then, unexpectedly, a little bit of the bewitching voice was mixed in with the song. So suddenly, one of the fairies in the fairy choir bumped into the exquisite ball. The fairies on both sides hurriedly supported it, and there was a burst of "gee gee gua gua." Fairy Ivan looked at this scene and revealed a mischievous smile. Of course, this small episode could not affect the overall situation. While the fairies were confused, Angelia had already used the usual summoning spell to activate the next enchanted card. Special enchanted card, Great Liberation. Boom! A huge firework suddenly appeared in the middle of the 7 fairies, and the firework formed the 3 words, Great Liberation. The music floating in the air suddenly changed, and became a mighty marching song. The fairy who bumped into the exquisite ball suddenly raised its head as if it was a conditioned reflex. Then, it put its feet together, straightened its back, poked its hand on its head, and looked straight ahead, salute. The other fairies were relatively ignorant. But when the song reached the climax, their eyes suddenly changed, and they stood up straight and saluted together with the fairy. Pum! The Great Liberation in the air exploded. The 7 fairies suddenly cheered excitedly, and the strange clothes on their bodies changed into various kinds of clothes in the blink of an eye. Some wore a suit and picked up a briefcase, some changed into a small skirt and tied a bow, some put on casual clothes and a laced hat, some changed into a student uniform and carried a small school bag. The 7 fairies all received the Great Liberation, and each fairy became an independent individual. The eyelids of the 2 professors at the judging panel twitched. Given their experience, of course they knew what that really meant. But they had never thought that this girl, who wasn't really outstanding among the 3rd-year students, would actually be able to make a magic card of that level. The layman watched the show, while the expert watched the skill. This enchanted card, even in the professor's collections, was extremely precious and precious. Most of the audience outside the arena did not understand. Even Dake on the blue player's platform could only catch a glimpse of it based on his previous guess. But the time for this round was too tight, and he did not have time to think about what this meant. He could only continue to use his summoning spell with all his might. At this time, he only had 3 cards left in his hand: Diru Beast, Greed 2, Fantasy Beast, Ever-Changing Monster. In the 15th second of the 3rd round, he successfully summoned Greed 2. A person's energy and magic power were limited. Duelists in Enchanted Duel could not always use every minute and every second effectively. Dake could only say that he had already tried his best. With the activation of Greed 2, the trash slime lying on the blue square enchanted ball also changed from a 1-star trash slime to a 2-star greed slime eye, just like the little evil beast. But other than the change in form, it was still useless. Its 3 dimensions of attack and defense were 0, so it could only be used as a treasure detector. Then another 3.5 seconds. Dake began to summon Diru Beast with all his might. Almost at the same time, on the opposite side, Angelia also began to summon the 3rd enchanted card of this round. Both of them were using the sacrificial summoning spell. In this aspect, Angelia only maintained a speed that was slightly faster than the second-year assessment standard. But Dake had not reached that level. Therefore, Angelia completed the sacrificial summoning spell faster than him. 1, 2, 3. The 7 release sprites, starting from the red sprite, turned into light one by one. Until now, Dake had already confirmed his guess, but he did not dare to be distracted. The audience outside the arena had already exclaimed. The scene in front of them was completely different from what many people had expected. Under normal circumstances, if the sprite choir was offered as a sacrifice, the 7 sprites would turn into light together. This meant that the sprite choir was a single entity and existed as a single sacrifice. But now, one by one, they turned into light and rose into the sky, which meant something else. What level is the enchanted fairy being summoned? When the 5th sprite turned into light, someone finally could not hold back. Dake's enchanted fairy is at most a 4-star, right? The first-year students were still hoping that Dake could win glory for their year, so they could not help but feel a little anxious at this time. Especially AI Ma, who had suffered a crushing defeat before, could not help but feel nervous. D. Anna, who was stuck to Luo C, even forgot to chew the milk candy in her mouth. But immediately after, the 6th sprite turned into light. The last remaining sprite looked up at the sky in a daze, watching helplessly as its 6 companions turned into a part of the huge summoning array, lonely and helpless. But at this moment, no one paid attention to it, who was alone. A black ferocious beast, whose size was comparable to a giant monster, appeared from the sacrificial summoning array with a roar. Boom! It was as if it was announcing its arrival. The black gorilla jumped down from the sky and stomped on the ground. When its huge body landed on the ground, it created a thunderous sound. The black gorilla raised its upper body, its scarlet eyes looking around. Its 2 thick arms smashed hard on the ground like giant hammers, and immediately, ripples appeared, and a violent aura covered the entire arena. Fairy Evie raised her eyebrows, her 2 pink ribbons swaying like snakes, ready to make a move. But its main body could not help but lower its body, its expression fearful. The power of a 6-star enchanted fairy was fully displayed. It's actually a 6-star. At this moment, Dake had just completed the sacrificial summoning. He put down his hand, his eyes full of shock. He felt that he might really experience the feeling of defeat in this duel. Senior Sister Angelia really had a lot of ways to summon people. Especially this combination of Sprite Choir and Great Liberation, it was an eye-opener for him, and he could not help but sigh at his lack of knowledge. Looking at the situation where there was only 1 sprite left, the restriction of this combination should be the gap between the stairs. To summon a 3rd-rank enchanted fairy, one had to have at least 1 2nd-rank enchanted fairy as a foundation, so it was impossible to directly use this combination to summon a 7-star enchanted fairy. But if he could find a way to remove this restriction, Dake muttered to himself, and then focused on the match. In order to summon Diru Beast, he used a total of 5 enchanted cards, using a 2-star Little Devil Beast and a 2-star Greedy Slime Eye as the sacrifice to finally succeed. For this, he almost skipped the entire 3rd round. The rhythm of both sides clearly slowed down, and Angelia was not in a hurry to let the black gorilla attack. In the blink of an eye, it was the 4th round. The Diru Beast, which had just appeared, felt the irritable aura of the black gorilla. The fur on its tail stood up, and its expression was unprecedentedly serious. Dee-da! The sound of the round changing became the opportunity to blow the battle horn. Go! Angelia's voice gradually became louder. That black gorilla fiercely hammered its chest, making a drumming sound. When it let go of its hand, it suddenly opened its mouth, and a terrifying beast roar came out. Roar. Writing 100 million points slow, sorry XDM, oath. 6 o'clock in the morning, 1, tong, must, shall, add a chapter. Chapter 243. Card name, Overlord Gorilla. Type, Sprite card. Level, Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Normal. Magic Power, 2100. Attack, 2800. Defense, 2300. Ultimate Skills. Overlord Roar, Black Gorilla Hammer. The black gorilla with muscles like a boulder made Dake think of a certain King Kong. Website, https://m. Vipkanshu. VIP's heart tightened, and he saw the black gorilla suddenly open its huge mouth, and the roar was deafening. There was a magic shield on the contestant stage, so they were not hurt by the sound waves, but the Dilu beast and Fairy Ibu on the ground were blown back by the strong wind produced by the roar. The hair of the two magic guide sprites stood up, and the strong wind carried the ferocity of a fierce beast, and a fierce and overbearing pressure pressed down. Ultimate Skill. Overlord Roar. If the Dilu beast and Fairy Ibu didn't have one of the great sins as a foundation, they would have been shaken to the point that their spirits were dispirited, their bodies were frightened, and they would have curled up in a ball, trembling. But their strong minds and the foundation of the great sins allowed them to withstand this spiritual pressure. The Dilu beast's resistance was aroused, and a thunderous anger was born from the bottom of its heart. The power of the divine holy ring flowed through its body. The Dilu beast's magic attack and defense exceeded the stars, reaching 2,000, 2,400, and 1,500. Although it was still lower than the 6-star Overlord Gorilla, the difference between the two was only 1 star. This was not to the point where it could not move. Meow. The Dilu beast roared angrily, and it actually went against the wind, dragging its right paw all the way. The black gorilla angrily looked at the white cat coming against the wind, but the corner of its mouth drew back, revealing a trace of a sinister smile. The difference between the two was too big. Whether it was in terms of size or numbers. In front of the Overlord Gorilla that was more than 5 meters tall, the 1-meter Dilu beast was so small that it could be ignored. Although this tiny digital beast's mind was not taken away by the Overlord roar, the Overlord Gorilla still did not put it in its eyes. It responded to the roar and withdrew its aura. The Overlord's pressure in the field was slightly diluted. Then, like swatting a fly, it casually slapped the Dilu beast that was rushing over. "Be careful!" This exclamation came from outside the arena. The Dilu beast glanced outside. The moment the doppelganger was distracted, the shadow of the giant palm attacked. However, its fur felt the wind coming and it lowered its body to avoid the attack. When the palm was retracted, the Dilu beast took advantage of the opportunity to stand up straight. The power that it had accumulated when it was squatting down suddenly erupted, and it suddenly flew up. Speed and power were a perfect combination on its body. The feline's flexible limbs were on full display. The diluted beast was actually faster than the Overlord Gorilla, leaving behind 3 deep claw marks on its body. Rip. This wasn't even cat fist. The tyrant gorilla's tough skin could not stop the sharpness of the claw gauntlets copied from the golden sword lion. The Dilu beast's attack was successful. Taking advantage of the momentum, it spun around the Overlord Gorilla's body and appeared behind it in an instant. Swish! Under the stinging pain, the Overlord Gorilla felt that its dignity was being challenged. While it was furious, it twisted its butt and ruthlessly whipped its thick and long tail at the Dilu beast. The Dilu beast's eyes flashed. It leaned down without a hair's breadth. It was almost touching the ground. The Overlord Gorilla's tail swept across its scalp, scraping off a piece of white fur. The Dilu beast quickly rolled forward, turned over, and then turned around. It half-squatted and looked at the Overlord Gorilla's back. This thick-skinned ferocious beast had too many flaws. If it was just an ordinary magic guide fairy, it could still deal with it. However, in front of a magic guide fairy with high intelligence and extraordinary agility, it was full of flaws. The Dilu beast's eyes flashed with contempt. The corners of its eyes couldn't help but slanted upwards. It was nothing more than this. Then, a power suddenly erupted from its feet. It rushed forward again. After dodging the long black tail for the second time, it jumped up, crossing a distance of 2 to 3 meters, and stepped on the Overlord Gorilla's back. Then, it leaped along the Overlord Gorilla's spine. In just a few steps, it rushed to the Overlord Gorilla's head. Roar! The Overlord Gorilla roared angrily again. Unfortunately, without the support of a sure kill skill, the spiritual pressure of this roar couldn't have any effect on the Diru beast. When it reached out its hand to slap its head, the Diru beast had already used cat fist on the back of its head. The 3 lion claws on the claws were like sharp blades, completely tearing apart the thick and tough fur. A scratch deeper than before appeared on the back of the Overlord Gorilla's head. The severe pain caused by this made the Overlord Gorilla crazily slap its head. The gorilla's long arms were enough for it to slap the back of its head. However, the Diru beast had the essence of guerrilla warfare. After a successful attack, it didn't hesitate. After a 360-degree backflip, it successfully landed on the ground. In fact, the Overlord Gorilla's magic power didn't decrease by much. However, it was obviously angered to the point that it gave up thinking. In the eyes of the Diru beast, an intelligence level of 2.5 was no different from a retard. The Diru beast's eyes revealed a deep-rooted arrogance. It stretched out its claws and licked them. Seeing the Overlord Gorilla turn around after being angered, it only assumed a posture of accelerating at any time. Black Gorilla Hammer. A clear and melodious voice suddenly sounded. On the platform, Angelia finally couldn't help but give an order. At this time, the corners of her eyes were crazily twitching. If everything that had happened before was still barely acceptable, then this one-sided battle between a 4-star Magic Guide Elf and a 6-star Magic Guide Elf had caused her to completely lose her mind. In the textbooks of dueling classes, it had never been taught that a 4-star Magic Guide Elf could suppress a 6-star Magic Guide Elf without any external support. If a 4-star Magic Guide Elf was stronger than a 6-star Magic Guide Elf, then what was the point of the difference in star level and the difference in the 3 measurements? Of course, there was a point. However, under the surface of the 3 measurements, the Magic Guide Elf still had hidden elements such as speed, reaction, smell, hearing, and even intelligence that couldn't be ignored. The Diru beast's speed and reaction were definitely higher than average, and its intelligence was even higher. The difference between the 2 sides was definitely not as big as what was shown on the surface. If a comparison had to be made, the Diru beast was like a character in the hands of a player, and the Overlord Gorilla was a boss whose level and attributes were above the player. The final outcome depended on the player's skills. The Overlord Gorilla furiously raised its arm, and a pitch-black light formed a cylindrical black block on its forearm, fiercely smashing it towards the Diru beast. However, when the Diru beast raised its arm and charged up its sure kill skill, it had already begun to move. When the Black Gorilla Hammer hit the ground, the Diru beast had already accelerated. Divine Skill, Quick Dodge, Automatic Version. Chapter 244. Amidst the earth-shattering hammer strikes, the light white cat shuttled back and forth like a ghost. The Conqueror Gorilla's attack power was as high as 2800, and every strike could cause fatal damage. It was like a dancer on the edge of a blade, walking on the edge of life and death. If it was not careful, it would fall. But there was no what if in a duel. Obstacles. There was more urgency in Angelia's voice. She waved the magic spell card in her hand. With the activation of obstacles, the air around the Dilu beast suddenly froze, and air bricks appeared one after another. Invisible air bricks, magic spells that obstructed the path. The Dilu beast's beard trembled, and it felt the change in the surrounding environment from the flow of the wind. Remember the website, Vipkanshu. VIP. It abruptly stopped and threw a punch forward. Boom! One of the air bricks instantly shattered. However, the Overlord Gorilla that had turned around finally seized this opportunity. The huge black gorilla jumped up and stomped on the Dilu beast with its hands on its knees. The Dilu beast was instantly covered by a shadow. But when the audience was shocked, its body suddenly disappeared. It then appeared 3 meters in front of the Conqueror Gorilla and successfully avoided the Conqueror Gorilla's Mount Tai. And the air bricks created by obstacles were crushed by the Conqueror Gorilla's stomp. Dake put down the blink spell in his hand, and there were only 2 cards left in his hand. Magic Beast, Ever-Changing Monster, Hawkman Wrestling. The 4th round was over in the blink of an eye, and the overly intense battle made it hard for people to breathe. In order to help the Delu Beast avoid the fatal attack at the critical moment, Dake did not even have the time to summon other magic spirits. Tick. The 5th round began. Both sides drew cards again. Dake's hand expanded to 4 cards. And Angelia's hand expanded to 5 cards. Dake's deck only had 7 cards left. Angelia's deck still had many cards. Dake looked at the magic card in his hand. Magic Beast, Ever-Changing Monster, Hawkman Wrestling, Bliss 3 Moon, Ball Sea Lion. There were still cards left in the deck. Sad Face 1. Kettle. 2. Pride Eye. 3. Pride 2 Anu. Blink Curse. Milk Jar. Energy Potion. Silence Potion. Dake, who had lost the favor of Kettle, was in a tough battle. While the Delu Beast and the Overlord Gorilla were fighting, his thoughts quickly turned. The deluded beast's seemingly fierce battle didn't actually cause too much damage to the Overlord Gorilla. With Angelia's interference, the deluded beast's difficulty in defeating the Overlord Gorilla was no less than defeating the Overlord Gorilla in This Wolf. Therefore, the illusory beast, Ever-Changing Monster in Doc's hand became his biggest trump card. Fantasy Beast, Ever-Changing Monster, and Bliss 3 Moon could upgrade the Ever-Changing Monster to 4-star, which meant that it could transform into Angelia's 2nd-tier Magic Guide Fairy. However, the problem of losing control still needed a new Great Sin card to solve. In other words, he had to choose between Pride Eye and Pride 2 New. Next round. Dake's eyes flashed. While preserving his hope, he finally summoned the Hawkman Wrestling at the beginning of the 5th round. The Hawkman Wrestling might not be able to peck the exquisite orb, but casting Feather Dance at the crucial moment might have a miraculous effect. Moreover, he couldn't tolerate the existence of Angelia's last fairy. A 1-star fairy and a 3-star exquisite orb were the sacrificial offerings for the 4-star Magic Guide Fairy. Once Angelia drew a 4-star Magic Guide Fairy card, the situation would become even worse. Hawkman Wrestling, I'm counting on you. You. The Hawkman Wrestling suddenly spread its wings and flew high. Every time it appeared in a duel, it would be able to make it excited. However, it was a pity that this time, there was no room for it to display its abilities. However, no matter how proud a warrior was, it wouldn't reject a group order. At this moment, it turned into a hunter and hunted down that weak fairy. The appearance of the Hawkman Wrestling made Angelia immediately give up on summoning the 4-star Magic Guide Fairy. Originally, she was also weighing the pros and cons of sacrificing the exquisite orb. Now, there was no need to weigh it too much. She chose another newly drawn Magic Guide Fairy on the spot. Magic Guide Summoning, Flying Guinea Pig. The card surface turned, and a guinea pig with gray wings flew out from it, quickly growing to the size of a bucket. It was chubby and very cute. It made people want to hold it in their hands and pinch it flat. However, it was this guinea pig that was holding a chopstick-length western sword, flapping its wings and flying in the air, raising its sword at the Hawkman Wrestling. The Hawkman Wrestler grinned, his spirits rising. The battle between the Hawkman Wrestling and the flying guinea pig. The battle between the Delu Beast and the Overlord Gorilla. It unfolded in the sky and on the ground at the same time. Fairy Ivan guarded in front of the blue magic guide ball, 2 pink ribbons fluttering in the air. It also wanted to join the battle, but it raised its paw to take a look and gave up. Not to mention what to do if its nails were worn out, it felt that it really couldn't scratch the Overlord Gorilla's skin. Therefore, protecting the magic guide ball from being stolen became its duty. The battle became more and more intense. Whether it was the people inside or outside the arena, they all held their breaths and stared. The outcome of a battle between magic elves was usually decided very quickly. This was because their moves were very straightforward, and they weren't afraid of death. They also needed to decide the outcome of a battle within 3 to 5 minutes. Otherwise, they would start consuming their own mana. In short, it was a fight to the death. A fighting style like the Diru beast was extremely rare. However, as long as it was within the rules of a magic guide duel, the winner would be king. Every time a duelist relied on a new trick to win, it would attract a bunch of imitators. However, there were some things that not everyone could imitate. Halfway through the 5th round, Dake silently summoned Magic Beast, ever-changing monster. Just like summoning Trash Slime, it pretended to be a pool of mucus and lay on the blue magic guide ball. A real duel was different from a card game. As long as it could pretend to be useless, it could eliminate its presence. Since it was a trump card, it naturally had to be hidden. Then, the battle in the sky was decided. The flying guinea pig was torn to pieces by the flying eagle man, but the falling eagle man's body was also pierced by the western sword and had to land to catch its breath. Angelia held 4 magic guide cards in her hand, but she kept frowning and only focused on the Overlord Gorilla's battle. Unknowingly, the location of the battle had moved from the red area to the blue area. It's time. Angelia suddenly pulled out one of the magic guide cards. Only 3 seconds later, the huge black gorilla suddenly disappeared in front of the Diru beast and appeared behind it in a flash. Its turning speed wasn't fast, but it didn't need to turn around. Roar! With a roar, the Overlord Gorilla directly pounced on the blue magic guide ball. Fairy Ibu suddenly straightened her ribbon. Majimoto. Chapter 245. Flicker Incantation. As a general incantation that could be learned in the first half of the first year, the Flicker Incantation was very difficult to create, but it could always be used at crucial moments. Angelia looked at the Overlord Gorilla that had successfully bypassed the Dilu beast and pounced at the blue magic conducting ball. He couldn't help but reveal a faint smile of victory. With the Overlord Gorilla's attack power, it only needed one attack. The life enchantment with 2,000 points of magic was just a flickering candle in the wind. As for Fairy Ibu that was blocking the magic conducting ball, she just needed to crush the life enchantment along with it. A 4-star that could block a 6-star magic conducting fairy was special in the end. Angelia didn't think that this Fairy Ibu would be able to do it like that white cat. Everyone's gazes were fixed on this moment. Remember in 1 second, https://m, Vipkanchu. VIP Dake suddenly became nervous. This change was too fast. Even if he reacted immediately, he wouldn't be able to think of a countermeasure. He could only hope that the magic conducting fairies were quick-witted. The Overlord Gorilla used its 2 arms to push the ground and quickly close the distance between it and the magic conducting ball. At the last moment, its 4 limbs exerted force and it suddenly leapt up. Its huge body covered the entire summoning area, and its ugly face became even more sinister. Fairy Ibu bared her fangs when she was covered by the Overlord Gorilla's shadow. 2 ribbons shot out like snakes, trying to obstruct the Overlord Gorilla's attack. But the ribbons had no sharp edges. When they pierced the Overlord Gorilla's abdomen, it was like piercing a steel rock. They didn't even leave a dent. The Overlord Gorilla didn't feel any pain or itch, completely ignoring it. Its thick lower limbs heavily stepped down, and its thick black hair almost touched Fairy Ibu's nose. Its eyes were scarlet. When its body came to a sudden stop, its thick black right arm was already fiercely lashing out at the blue magic conducting ball like a whip. Me. Fairy Ibu's hair stood on end. Under the influence of the mission to protect the magic conducting ball, it threw itself at the Overlord Gorilla's right arm. But when it came into contact with the wind pressure, it felt as if its cheeks were being blown flat. When it came into contact with the muscular right arm, it was sent flying without any suspense. It revealed a pained expression as it was sent flying backwards. However, the 2 ribbons still managed to wrap around the magic conducting ball with great difficulty. Borrowing the momentum of its flight, the ribbons suddenly contracted, attempting to pull the magic conducting ball out of the tyrant gorilla's attack range. It did it successfully. The Overlord Gorilla's palm passed through the air and slammed into the ground. As the earth trembled, the Dilu beast finally regained its senses. its cheeks flushed red with shame and anger. Meow. The sharp meowing of the cat was extremely terrifying. The Dilu beast used all 4 limbs and pounced towards the Overlord gorilla. However, after the Overlord gorilla missed its first attack, it had already caught up with the magic conducting ball. This time, it had learned its lesson. First, it used its left hand to grab Fairy Ibu's satin belt, then raised its right arm up high to accumulate power before abruptly slamming it down. We won. Angelia looked over from the red team's platform and saw the Overlord gorilla, whose back was facing her, delivering the finishing blow. Although the pink magic conducting sprite unexpectedly struggled, the final result was still the same. It ends here. Angelia revealed a smile as if she hadn't had her fill. The experience of this duel was unexpectedly good. She discovered that she had somewhat fallen in love with duels. Perhaps joining the duel club was indeed a good idea. At this moment, the corner of her eyes suddenly twitched. She saw the Overlord gorilla's thick black arms suddenly stop in the air. What's going on? She couldn't see what had happened due to the angle. Overlord gorilla. She could only subconsciously growl. The Overlord gorilla's body suddenly shook, then it turned around. Its ferocious face revealed a dazed expression. Ayo, ayo, ayo. What's going on? The Overlord gorilla slightly moved its body and slowly lowered its raised right arm. Sensing the abnormality, the Dilu beast turned around and circled around to guard in front of Fairy Ibu. Then it suddenly turned its head and saw a bad woman standing in front of the blue magic conducting ball. Hurry, hurry! The bad woman's mouth let out a strange cry. The atmosphere outside the arena had completely exploded. No matter if it was a junior or a senior, their eyes were filled with astonishment as they looked at the arena. Even the 2 professors on the judging panel had their eyes wide open. Just a moment ago, when the Overlord gorilla was about to smash the magic conducting ball, that slime that was lying on the magic conducting ball suddenly swelled up, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into Angelia's appearance. Although it was just a simple transformation and didn't use the transform skill to copy data, the Overlord gorilla's appearance was still very real. However, Angelia, who was transformed by the polymorph, was still very real. It looked exactly the same as the real Angelia on the stage, except that it could not speak. The Overlord gorilla that suddenly saw its master appear in front of it was instantly stunned. It might be able to use other methods to distinguish between the real and the fake, but it would certainly take some time. Under the sudden situation, that palm couldn't be smashed down no matter what. On the stage, Dake looked calm and composed, but at this moment, it was undoubtedly fiercely wiping away its sweat. The normal transformation of the Overlord gorilla was limited by its size. At least, this Overlord gorilla could at most become the size of a human during its normal transformation. Moreover, without a real object to imitate, it was easy to have flaws. In other words, Angelia was on the scene, so it could completely transform. This had a confusing effect, so the Overlord gorilla couldn't recognize it. When Angelia's low roar sounded, the Overlord gorilla gradually figured out a little bit. But it was already too late. Whether it was in a duel or in life, once the best opportunity was missed, it would be very difficult to find another one. Tick. The sound of the 6th round's switch sounded as scheduled. Dake almost subconsciously reached out its hand to pick up a card. Pride 2 new. Milk can, here it comes. Dake was excited. Magic conducting summon. Bliss 3 moon's light was dazzling. The Overlord gorilla seemed to have smelled Bliss' scent and couldn't help but slightly raise its head. The pinkish-white light sprinkled down like moonlight, enveloping its body. Bathed in bliss, the Overlord gorilla's cheeks had a strange red color, and the Bliss emblem quickly lit up on its forehead. When the emblem was formed, it instantly absorbed all the pinkish light like a whale sucking in water. The Overlord gorilla's strength suddenly skyrocketed, jumping from 1 star to 4 stars from 3 stars. But at this moment, it was still standing in the same place with Angelia's appearance. Its long bangs were swept away by the power of the emblem, revealing a smooth forehead and thin eyebrows. The eyes under the eyebrows were as moist as water, and the blush on its cheeks had a trace of delicate beauty. There was a flirtatious aura that didn't match its appearance. Seeing this, the students who knew Angelia felt their hearts skip a beat. The Overlord Gorilla's eyes immediately looked at Dake on the stage. Dake was silently counting the time, and as soon as the summoning cooldown was over, he would immediately activate Pride to New. When the Overlord Gorilla in the field saw the Overlord Gorilla that the Overlord Gorilla had transformed into, it finally confirmed that this was a fake. It suddenly showed a violent expression, clenched its fist and smashed down. But although the Overlord Gorilla's mind was filled with bliss, it couldn't just ignore the threat. It was just as Dake expected. After the Overlord Gorilla felt the threat, it decisively gave up on the normal transformation and activated the transformation skill. And the target of the transformation was naturally the strongest one on the field, the Overlord Gorilla. Roar! The skin that belonged to Angelia cracked from the inside out, and a huge black-haired gorilla drilled out of the skin. It raised its huge hand and grabbed the Overlord Gorilla's fist. Using the momentum of the transformation, the Overlord Gorilla's fist was pushed back by the Overlord Gorilla's fist. The Overlord Gorilla was caught off guard and took a few steps back, but when it reacted, its face became even more ferocious. On the field, two identical ferocious beasts were quietly confronting each other. As the light of Pride 2 New poured into the Overlord Gorilla's body, its mind finally found a trace of clarity from the chaos. Overlord Gorilla, Overlord Roar. The voice that came from behind made it immediately open its mouth and roar. A tsunami-like sound wave suddenly roared out. For the first time, the Overlord Gorilla was forced back by its own killing move. After it took a few more steps back, all the hair on its body stood up, and it hit its own chest with force. But this kind of deterrent action was meaningless. Suddenly, a white shadow flashed in the bottom left corner of its vision. After a few seconds of thinking, the deluded beast stepped forward and entered the battle between the beasts. The biggest weakness of the Overlord Gorilla's transformation was that it couldn't change its mana. Now, the 4-star Overlord Gorilla only had 400 mana. If it really fought with the Overlord Gorilla, it would definitely lose. But after the deluded beast joined in, everything changed. After the Overlord Gorilla transformed, there was an additional killing move called Black Gorilla Hammer in its skill bar. For the Overlord Gorilla with 2,800 attack and 2,300 defense, once it was hit by the Black Gorilla Hammer, it would definitely suffer a lot of damage. In addition, the Overlord Gorilla's mana had been worn down by the deluded beast. This attack would be fatal. Magic Summoning. Seeing that the Overlord Gorilla was in a desperate situation, Angelia, who didn't know that the Overlord Gorilla only had 400 mana, made a prompt decision to sacrifice the Lonely Fairy and the Exquisite Ball as a sacrifice, summoning a new Tier 4 Magic Summoning Elf. It was a black Rottan beast that was extremely fast. Card name, Vine Beast. Type, Elf card. Race, Plant. Attribute, Grass. Mana, 1400. Attack, 1900. Defense, 900. Killing move, Ghost Vine, Vine Twist. The small dog-shaped beast formed by black vines had a light body that gave it extreme speed like a phantom. The black ghost vines that extended from both sides of its shoulders were as sharp as spears. Its powerful attack coupled with its explosive speed made it like a shadow assassin, bringing despair to people. But after Angelia summoned the Vine Beast, she didn't order it to join the battle with the Overlord Gorilla. The Vine Beast's weak body couldn't withstand the White Cat's attack, and it wasn't a warrior that could gallop on the battlefield. At this moment, its target was the Hawkman that had been forced to the side by the previous battle. The heavily injured Hawkman was only a 3-star magic summoning elf and had temporarily lost the ability to fly. Even if it raised its wings in time, it still couldn't block the piercing of the ghost vines. After the last cry, the Hawkman left the battlefield. The biggest threat to the magic ball had been eliminated. The Vine Beast's body turned in the air and rushed toward Fairy Ibu without stopping. Fairy Ibu, who had just taken the Overlord Gorilla's attack, wasn't in a good state at the moment, even though her upper arm wasn't seriously injured. Her 2 ribbons were especially damaged. But her gaze was resolute. After capturing the Vine Beast's position, she crashed into it. Her body turned into light in the air, and a mysterious sacrificial summoning array appeared in front of the blue magic ball. An adorable cow came out of it and instantly raised both of its hooves to block the ghost vine that was piercing towards it. The ghost vines that had always been successful finally pierced the steel plate. Moo! The milk jug grabbed one of the ghost vines with each hand and pulled with all his might. The light vine beast was suddenly pulled over. No, it was taking advantage of the situation. A black crack appeared in the middle of its body, and its whole body instantly turned into a huge mouth, swallowing the milk can whole. Crack! The jagged black vines closed forcefully. Killing move, vine twist. The vine beast let out a ghostly howl, wanting to strangle the milk can inside its body. However, its expression suddenly changed. Rip! The body made of black vines was torn in half from the inside out. The milk can pulled the black vine's body in front of it and continued to tear it apart. Not only was it not injured at all, but its attack power also temporarily increased from 1000 to 1500. Herbivore. Passive skill. When attacked by a grass attribute killing move, not only will you not be injured, but your attack power will also increase. The black vine mulberry died with its eyes wide open. Roar. In the end, the overlord gorilla couldn't resist the righteous 2 versus 1. After being dazed by the Delu beast, the ever-changing beast's black gorilla hammer hit its chin, giving it a fatal blow. Boom! As the huge black gorilla fell to the ground, the audience was in an uproar. On the red team's platform, Angelia couldn't help but grip her cards tightly. She had never experienced an infinite reversal in a duel, and her mind was a little unbalanced in this roller coaster experience. But her previous strategy was effective. Although the situation had fallen to a low point, the Vine Beast successfully killed the Hawkman wrestling. The opponent had lost its ability to fight in the air. The red magic ball flying in the air had nothing to worry about. She still had a chance. Tick. The 7th round had quietly arrived. But this was no longer important. Dake summoned the last card in his hand. The ball sea lion, who appeared in the light, used a large area killing move against the magic ball in the air. Bewitching voice. It was different from Fairy Ibu's bewitching voice. The ball sea lion's bewitching voice turned into a water attribute under the effect of moist voice, and it had physical damage outside of mental strength. Red magic ball. Magic power returned to 0. 2 in 1 4000. Chapter 246. As the ripples in the air dissipated, a few drops of water fell to the ground. Angelia blankly stretched out her hand, and the cold sensation on her fingertips made her realize that she had really lost. Although victory and defeat were commonplace, she still couldn't accept losing a duel that she had thought she would definitely win. Especially since her opponent was a first-year student. There was a summonable magic guide sprite in her hand, but it was only a 2-star magic guide sprite. Even if she summoned it, it would be useless, so she hesitated. But this hesitation wouldn't change the result. A loss was a loss. Angelia hadn't reached the point where she didn't want to admit defeat. She took a deep breath, put away the magic guide card, and turned to the contestant stage. Dake dimming, I'll remember this. The applause of the audience was late, but it arrived. Dake stayed on the contestant stage for a bit longer than Angelia. Website https://m Vipkanchu. VIP. He put away the magic guide sprites one by one, his mind still replaying the scene of the duel. The short duel that lasted less than 4 minutes made people excited, but it also made it hard to hide their exhaustion. The high concentration of spiritual force and the active magic had brought about a huge consumption. He didn't feel proud because of his victory in this duel. Rather than saying that this duel was his victory, it was better to say that it was the magic guide sprite's victory. If it wasn't for the Diru Beast's extraordinary performance and the multiform monster's inspiration at the crucial moment, he might have already lost. This result made him firmly believe that educating the magic guide sprites was the right thing to do. Of course, moral education couldn't be lacking either. Fairy Ibu's tenacity in not forgetting to protect the magic guide ball after being swept away was worthy of praise. As the intelligence of the magic guide sprites increased, their feedback on the damage and pain would also increase. Thinking about it from another perspective, Dake didn't think that he could react that way when he was in pain. He continued to think about what he needed to make up for and what he could use to his advantage, slowly walking down the stage. The 3 judges on the judging panel also announced the score at this time. Professor Cheong-si was the first to raise his board. Red side, Angelia, 9 points. Blue side, Dake, 10 points. As the winner, Dake received full marks as expected. Angelia, on the other hand, also got 9 points. She was 1 point away from 10 points. But that was not because she had failed. It was only because she was a third-year student that she did not display the dominance that a third-year student should have. Her quick summoning technique was a plus, but the subsequent handling was a minus. However, this time, Professor Fox gave her a perfect score. Red team, 10 points. Blue team, 10 points. In terms of this recruitment, both of their performances were undoubtedly above the standard. There was nothing more to ask for. Professor Fox gave a good review of Angelia's The Great Liberation. In the end, the 5th-year student judge also gave both contestants full marks. Once the scores for this match were out, even if they directly forfeited in the 3rd round, the 2 contestants would still be able to pass the recruitment process. Dake returned to the bench and sat down, continuing to think. Anna and Luo Si did not disturb him. Every duel could reflect many things that were lacking, but it was not easy to make up for them. He was still summarizing and reflecting. The recruitment competition continued. The next match in Field 1 was a civil war. The 2 contestants were White from the Knight Academy and Doran from the Aristocratic Academy. Doran was surprised that he was matched against White. However, he quickly composed himself and went up to the contestant stand. White, on the other hand, was slightly relieved. He was afraid that he would be matched against a third-year student like Ai Ma and Dake. That would cause him to lose without being able to perform. His score in the 1st round was already at the passing line. If he did not perform better in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, it would not be good. But since his opponent in this round was Dolan, who was in the same grade, he could finally show his best side. His summoning speed advantage, which he hadn't been able to fully display against Scott, could be further displayed now. If he could win the match, it would be even better. The situation was developing in his favor. But this time, Victor had indeed grasped the opportunity. His summoning speed was higher than Doran's, and the quality of his cards was also better than Doran's. He also had luck that Doran did not have. It could be said that he suppressed Doran in all aspects. This match was finally won smoothly. This gave him 2 7s and a 6. Although Dolong had lost, he had also displayed his strength in the competition and obtained a passing score. Following that, it was finally Anna's turn in the 4th match. After defeating the 2nd-year senior, Marjorie, in the previous round, she encountered another 2nd-year senior. However, she was not as lucky as the last round. This senior from the Knight Academy had a steady style. He blocked and resolved all of her attacks, and finally defeated her by relying on a richer deck of cards. Both of them performed well in this match and received high marks from the 3 judges. Then it was the 5th and 6th match. In the 7th match, Ai Ma Métis appeared again. Emma, who had lost to Senior Angelia in her first match and hadn't been able to perform at all, finally encountered a slightly normal player. It was a 2nd-year student from the Magic faculty. As soon as the match started, it attracted Dake's attention. He turned around from his conversation with Anna and looked at the 2nd-year student. It was a boy who looked very clean. He wore a coffee-colored scarf and looked very cultured. He did have the style of a student from the Magic faculty. Dake wondered why such a senior did not pass the exam last semester. Spencer Alec, nice to meet you. Spencer took the initiative to greet Emma politely as she stepped onto the contestants' platform. He was very popular. There were many students outside the venue who came to cheer for him. Doc blinked, thinking that student Emma was really unlucky. She had encountered 2 opponents that were not easy to deal with twice in a row. However, compared to Angelia, this senior Spencer should be slightly inferior. Ai Ma still had a chance. Similar judgments were made between Helena and Winnie. Two members of the literature club looked worriedly at Emma, who was on the red team stage. Beside them was Angelia, who had gathered together. Helena turned around and teased, "Angelia, how does it feel to lose a duel?" Angelia said expressionlessly, "It's not bad." Helena's eyes widened. "There's something wrong with you." Angelia. Helena, "I didn't know you had this kind of XP." Angelia resisted the urge to smash her head with Claire's Weekly Travels. She suppressed her tone and asked, "Have you chosen the new students for this year's aristocratic academy?" Helena shook her head. "Not yet." "Why, do you have someone to recommend?" Angelia pointed at the back of a certain someone who was sandwiched between two girls on the bench and asked, "Why don't you look for him?" Helena looked at Dake and smiled. "I was wondering why you suddenly cared about the club's recruitment. How about this, if you can recruit him, I'll cover all your books for the next month." Angelia rolled her eyes and guessed the reason. While they were chatting, the competition in the venue had advanced to the battle stage. AI Ma was at a disadvantage in the first round of the speed competition. However, she once again drew the Golden Beast from the first 5 cards. The Golden Beast was the most important part of her tactical system. Not only did it have a 3-star defense of 1,500 points, but it also had the godly Golden Devour skill. Compared to the in-class competition, her card deck had been further perfected, and she had more magic cards that could be used in conjunction with it. White light shot out from the Gold Beast card and landed in the red side summoning area. The 2-meter-tall machine made of gold let out a deep roar when it appeared, staring at the opponent's summoning area with a death stare. It was also a 3-star magic fairy. What Spencer summoned was a 3-meter-tall fat tiger with short limbs and a fat body. The fat tiger that looked more like a doll appeared in a sitting position. Its stubby limbs couldn't support its huge belly at all, and it didn't have the sharp claws that tigers should have. However, the Gold Beast could clearly sense a threat from this seemingly harmless magic guide elf. Card name, Sandbag Tiger. Type, Fairy card. Level, ****. Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Normal. Magic power, 1400. Attack, 800. Defense, 1600. Ultimate skills, Patience, Venting. Spencer looked at AI Ma's Golden Beast and then at his own Sandbag Tiger, but he didn't give the order to attack. AI Ma did the same. Both of them seemed to be very cautious. However, after the cooldown of the summoning spell was over, both of them took out their second magic card. Spencer's second magic card was also a magic fairy card. Accompanied by a roar, a skinny tiger appeared beside the Sandbag Tiger. This tiger-type magic fairy looked like it had been starved for dozens of days. It was all skin and bones, and the wind could blow it away. However, its eyes were filled with ferocity that the Sandbag Tiger didn't have. Card name, Sandbag Tiger. Type, Fairy card. Level, ****. Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Normal. Magic power, 1100. Attack, 1500. Defense, 700. Ultimate skill, Dying Bones. Spencer, who completed the summoning faster than AI Ma, immediately gave the order to attack after summoning Sandbag Tiger. Raise that metal lump. Although Sandbag Tiger didn't know how to raise it, it still lowered its head and bared its sharp teeth at the Golden Beast. Roar! Red light flashed in its eyes. Sandbag Tiger took off and charged. Perhaps it was because it didn't have any extra meat. Sandbag Tiger's speed was unexpectedly fast. It rushed into the red arena like a hurricane, its ferocious aura corroding the air. The Golden Beast let out a ferocious roar and charged fearlessly at the skinny tiger. Bang! There was a loud noise. Sandbag Tiger's skinny body almost fell apart. However, there was only a shallow claw mark on the Golden Beast's head. Although it could break its defense, it was like scraping sand. AI Ma calmed down a little. The summoning of the second magic card was completed. An ancient gold coin with wings fell from the sky and shot towards the Golden Beast like a beam of golden light. Golden Parasite. AI Ma's voice was slightly high-pitched. The flying gold coin landed on the Golden Beast's spine with a thud. Then, its body suddenly sank and melted into the golden beast's golden shell. Then, the golden beast's body shook. 2 balls of liquid metal drilled out from both sides of its body, forming a golden armor that covered its entire body. Another pair of golden wings spread out angrily. Roar! The golden beast lowered its head and roared. Its aura increased tremendously. Magic, 1,1300. Attack, 1,300. Defense, 1,500, 1,800. Ultimate skill, Golden Devour, Feather Arrow. The Golden Worm's parasitism gave the golden beast a total of 300 points of magic power and defense increase, as well as the ultimate skill, Feather Arrow. The moment the wings spread out, the golden beast's body suddenly accelerated and bit Sandbag Tiger, who had taken a few steps back. Sandbag Tiger's weak defense only had 700 points. How could he withstand another attack from the golden beast? His magic power dropped like a flood. After a while, Sandbag Tiger was no longer able to react and was casually flung away. The skin and tissue of the skinny tiger that fell heavily to the ground turned into specks of light, but the complete skeleton of the tiger remained intact. AI Ma, who was on the stage, frowned. She couldn't figure out what the problem was at that moment. She could only hurry and order the golden beast to attack the Sandbag Tiger. The winged golden beast was very fast. The first thing it did when it got close was to tear open the Sandbag Tiger's abdomen with its claws. There was no cotton inside. Of course, no intestines were exposed. Spencer, who was on the stage, looked very calm. The Sandbag Tiger was considered a strong card among all of his 3-star magic spirits. Its defense was 100 points higher than the top magic spirits. In addition to its body's special characteristics, it was basically invulnerable to blunt weapons. However, its resistance to sharp weapons was very weak. The golden beast's attack was only 1,300 points, but it could already tear open the golden beast's abdomen with its sharp claws. However, the Sandbag Tiger's injuries weren't as serious as it looked. Its magic power didn't decrease at all. Even though the golden beast left wounds on its body again and again, the Sandbag Tiger still sat on the same spot and didn't move. After a few times, AI Ma felt that something was wrong. She immediately shouted, "Golden Beast, go around it." However, when the golden beast tried to go around it to attack the magic ball, the Sandbag Tiger suddenly turned around and hugged the blue magic ball tightly in its arms. No, it even stuffed it into its torn abdomen. This made AI Ma immediately recall Sarah's death mummy. It looked like they were using the same method to protect the ball. She was speechless. Helpless, the golden beast could only continue to attack the Sandbag Tiger, leaving more wounds on its body. Drip. 2 in 1 4,000. What's with the underworld? F***CK. Chapter 247. Battle Stage. 30s, second round. Draw card. AI Ma gritted her teeth and summoned her third magic guide elf. The gold beast had a defense of 1,800 under the parasite of the gold coin bug, which was enough to deal with most magic guide elves. However, the ultimate goal of the duel was to break the magic guide ball's life barrier. AI Ma could not control the magic guide ball remotely, so she had to summon a magic guide elf to protect it from sneak attacks. Soon, the white light from the magic guide card fell on the red side summoning area, and a new magic guide elf appeared. It did not look as ferocious as the gold beast, but a bronze statue of a soldier kneeling on one knee. The bronze statue of a soldier with a long sword hanging from its waist was tall and lifelike, similar to the golem game in the academy, with a full body of light armor on its body. Remember the URL. M. Vipkanshu. 6. Card name, Bronze Soldier. Type, Elf card. Level, Race, Machine type. Attribute, Steel. Magic power, 1100. Attack, 1200. Defense, 1300. Ultimate skill, Sweep. Almost at the same time, Spencer summoned his third magic guide elf. A glowing beetle appeared in the blue side summoning area. Card name, Electromagnetic Beetle. Type, Elf card. Level, Race, Machine type. Attribute, Lightning. Magic power, 100 attack, 100 defense, 200 ultimate skill, magnetic sense. The electromagnetic beetle looked like an iron scarab, with 2 antennae equipped with magnetic sensors that could sense magnetic forces, which could replace a compass to point the way during exploration, making it a good helper for adventurers. However, in the duel arena, its only advantage was that it could fly. Flying in the air allowed it to avoid many attacks, which was the inherent advantage of flying magic guide elves. With the appearance of this 1-star magic guide elf, AI Ma immediately realized that her opponent had gathered enough offerings to summon a 4-star magic guide elf. This made her feel a sense of urgency. However, even though the golden beast tore open one wound after another on the sandbag tiger's body, it was unable to cause any real damage to it. AI Ma looked at the cards in his hand, trying to find a way to crack it. However, her card set was the same as most of the first-year students at this time, mainly using the first-tier magic elven cards. There were also many magic elf cards in his hand that were used to make up the numbers. Now that even gold beasts were unable to break through the sandbag tiger's defense, no matter how many magic guide spirits he summoned, it would only increase his consumption. The disadvantage of not having a high-star magic guiding fairy was vividly displayed at this moment. Emma pulled out a corner of a magic card from her hand, her eyes flashing slightly. This magic card was her greatest achievement during this period of time. Card name, Gold Type, Magic Card Effect. A layer of golden shell is plated on the surface of your magic guide fairy, making it look like a golden object. Defense plus 100. That means he's in his first year. Spencer noticed AI Ma's confusion. He took out a 4-star magic guide elf from his hand and suddenly reminded her, "I'm going to summon it." AI Ma's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly looked up at him. She saw this second-year senior from the School of Magic directly pull out a magic card and start the sacrificial summoning right in front of her. Was this a reminder for newbies, or was it a form of arrogance? AI Ma frowned, but she also knew that she did not have the means to stop him from doing the sacrificial summoning. However, she had full confidence in the gold beast's defense. If it was only a 4-star magic guide elf, and if he wanted to summon a 4-star magic guide elf, he would have to sacrifice the sandbag tiger. It was not a good choice to give up the protection of the magic guide ball in order to pursue the second-tier magic guide elf. AI Ma held her breath and focused. She was ready to attack the magic guide ball at any time. A moment later, Spencer completed the sacrificial summoning. The electromagnetic beetle that had just appeared first turned into light, followed by AI Ma's eyes twitched. She suddenly noticed that the bones of the sandbag tiger had not disappeared. At this moment, they were glowing. Spencer's voice rang out, offering the bones of the electromagnetic beetle and the sandbag tiger as sacrifices. Summon. A huge sacrificial summoning array shone in the air. A white-furred tyrant dog leaped out of the summoning array. The tyrant dog was over 2 meters tall. The smoke coming out of its mouth was pitch black and smelly. Its wrinkled face was hideous. It was a magic guide elf that did not match Spencer's temperament at all. Card name, Tyrant Dog. Type, Elf Card. Level, *******. Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Evil. Magic Power, 1600. Attack, 1800. Defense, 1600. Ultimate Skill, Mad Dog's Tooth. The bones of that sandbag tiger can actually be used as a 3-star sacrifice. It was the first time AI Ma had seen such an operation. She was extremely shocked. Was he trying to squeeze it dry even if it was dead? This made her immediately order, "Gold Beast, return to defense." Since the opponent had successfully summoned a 4-star magic guide elf without sacrificing the sandbag tiger, then the gold beast's attack was meaningless. Quickly returning to defense and trying to survive this round should be the best choice. It was not that she did not have a chance to turn the tables. But just as the golden beast loosened its grip on the sandbag tiger, Spencer calmly spat out, "Sandbag tiger, vent your anger." Roar. In an instant, the sandbag tiger that was sitting on the ground and allowing the gold beast to bite it turned its head. Its eyes that were squeezed into slits by its fat cheeks opened angrily and glared fiercely at the gold beast. A blinding light exploded from its body. The white light that flowed out from each of its wounds gathered together to form a powerful beam of light that shot through the gold beast's body. The gold beast with 1,800 defense and 1,300 magic power was instantly sent flying. A terrifyingly huge hole appeared in its chest. Gold beast. AI Ma could not help but cry out. However, the gold beast held on. A fatal wound with a hole in its chest was enough to cause most magic guide elves to lose their ability to fight. However, the gold beast was a mechanical type. Even if it only had a head left, as long as it still had magic power, it could continue to bite people. AI Ma realized that the gold beast's magic power was not depleted. She immediately activated the magic card in her hand, gold plating. The bronze soldier beside the gold beast was instantly enveloped in a golden light. Liquid gold poured down from the top of its head, plating its body with a perfect golden shell. The bronze soldier's original 1,300 defense became 1,400. For a 3-star magic guide elf, this was already a very good defense value. However, that was not the real reason for the gold plating. Gold Devour. The gold beast struggled to stand up under AI Ma's command. Its mouth opened to a terrifying extent and actually swallowed the gold soldier from head to toe. The gold soldier voluntarily sacrificed itself. After swallowing the gold soldier, a rich golden light erupted from the gold beast's body. Under the golden light, the wounds on the gold beast's chest and abdomen healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its already huge body expanded even further. Under the effect of Gold Devour, not only did the gold beast recover to its original state, it also became stronger. Its magic power limit increased by 500 points. The abnormal status was dispelled. Even its defense and attack both increased by 100 points. Magic power, 1,300, 1,800. Attack, 1,300, 1,400. Defense, 1,800, 1,900. Seeing the gold beast stand up again, AI Ma's heart calmed down. The second-year students who could participate in the Duel Club's recruitment next semester were generally not too strong. A 4-star magic guide elf was already their limit. After her gold beast successfully triggered Gold Devour, it would not be inferior to a 4-star magic guide elf. With a defense as high as 1,900, it could make most 4-star magic guide elves unable to do anything to it. This was the source of her confidence. Moreover, she had some understanding of the evil tyrant hound that Spencer summoned. That was a relatively common 4-star magic guide elf. The most common sure-kill skill was Mad Dog's Tooth, which could make the magic guide elf that was bitten enter an uncontrollable state of madness. However, such skills were usually ineffective against mechanical types. Next, she had to think of a way to increase the gold beast's attack power. Using various methods to create a fully armed and powerful elf was the main idea of her current strategy. However, the key magic guide card had not been drawn yet. On the other side, Spencer, on the other hand, looked slightly surprised. He did not know much about the gold beast and could not determine its strength. Thus, he ordered the evil tyrant hound to make a probing attack. In the end, the evil tyrant hound's 1,800 attack power was unable to break through its defense. Mad Dog's Tooth was also useless. However, the gold beast was also unable to pose a threat to the evil tyrant hound. Both sides were in a stalemate. In the process of the stalemate, the second round ended. The third round. Both sides drew cards at the same time. Spencer was no longer as calm as he was at the beginning. The speed at which he drew the cards became slightly more hurried. 2 magic guide cards were in his hands. He quickly checked them. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He selected one of the magic guide cards and placed it by his lips. Then, he looked at the red team's platform and said softly, "The first-year students are able to make me feel threatened. Not bad. In the name of Spencer Alec, magic guide summon, Flaming Claw." A crimson flame suddenly flew out from the card surface and entered the evil tyrant hound's right claw. The dog's claw with sharp nails suddenly burned fiercely. Woof! The evil tyrant hound barked and pounced on the gold beast again. Is it a flame enchantment or a fire-type weapon? AI Ma could not tell if Spencer was using a magic guide card or a weapon card. However, no matter which one it was a great threat to her. Fire-type was the bane of Steel-type. With the flaming claw, the evil tyrant hound could already penetrate the defense of the gold beast. Once the gold beast was defeated, she would no longer have the power to turn the tables. It was a pity. Her luck was not bad. Golden Treasure Box. AI Ma raised the magic guide card confidently. A dazzling golden light shone on the evil tyrant hound in the arena. After a moment, a treasure box filled with gold appeared in front of the evil tyrant hound. No living creature could resist the charm of gold. No. The evil tyrant hound's eyes suddenly turned into the shape of Phi. That was the symbol of the holy coin. Its running footsteps came to a halt. The expression on its face changed from ferocious to greedy. Evil tyrant hound, attack the sandbag tiger. AI Ma instantly gave the order. The control of the magic guide spirit by the golden treasure box would not exceed 30 seconds. The winner had to be decided as soon as possible. The evil tyrant hound, who had transferred control, immediately turned and pounced on the blue team. The gold beast flapped its wings and flew high, charging out at the same time. At this moment, Spencer finally experienced the charm of a duel. His expression changed drastically. He could no longer remain calm. The evil tyrant hound's flaming claws tore through the sandbag tiger's defense and even ignited its outer skin. Although the sandbag tiger relied on the endurance skill to hold on, the gold beast immediately followed up with a black tiger steals heart. Its claws dug into the sandbag tiger's abdomen and successfully touched the blue magic guide ball. Evil tyrant hound, wake up! Spencer suddenly leaned over the railing and roared down. However, his bond with the magic guide spirit was not deep enough. The evil tyrant hound waved its flaming right claw and completely tore the sandbag tiger to shreds. The blue magic guide ball was then exposed to the air. To avoid unnecessary trouble, AI Ma immediately gave the order to attack at the same time. As the flaming claws and the gold beast's claws fell at the same time, the blue magic guide ball's life barrier was completely shattered. Battle ended. Winner, AI Ma Métis. We won. Looking at the light fragments that exploded when the life barrier was shattered, AI Ma was a little stunned. After experiencing the blow from Senior Angelia, she was not too depressed, but the repeated failures still made the little girl feel unhappy. This carefree victory was still meaningful to her. Victory always brought confidence. And confidence was the standard of a victor. After being sullen for the entire afternoon, the first years of the Night Academy finally welcomed their moment. Their AI Ma had successfully defeated the second years. Cheers rose like boiling water. The two seniors from the literature club looked at AI Ma in a friendly manner and also clapped. White, who was in the crowd, looked on enviously. Last semester, he always thought that he would be the one standing in that position. The winner received cheers, but the loser did not receive any ridicule. Spencer walked down the contestant platform dejectedly. His good friends surrounded him and comforted him. At the judging panel, Professor Cheong-si said proudly, AI Ma Métis, not bad. Professor Fox's face darkened. Professor Cheong-si, a momentary failure doesn't mean anything. Spencer is hard-working enough. He will turn it around in the newcomer competition. Professor Cheong-si smiled. Let's wait and see. Today, she had undoubtedly won a complete victory. The judges gave their scores. Professor Cheong-si was the first to raise his sign. Red team, AI Ma, 9 points. Blue team, Spencer, 6 points. Professor Fox snorted and also raised his sign. Red team, 8 points. Blue team, 5 points. The fifth-year student judge was once again hit hard. Red team, 8 points. Blue team, 6 points. 2-in-1 4,100 words. Sorry, I failed to wake up at 3 in the morning. I slept too well on the weekend. Good luck today. Chapter 248. AI Mars Duel seemed to have become a dividing line. The top students of the first years had a relatively easy time in the competition. Not long after, with Saraswati's victory, the recruitment competition entered the third round. In the third round, Dake and Anna met an ordinary second-year student and won. The two professors quietly left during the third round and replaced the two upperclassmen who were supposed to be sitting there. As night fell, it gradually became dark outside the stadium. The recruitment competition was coming to an end. The duel club spent half an hour to calculate the score and came up with a score of 6-2. All the people with a score above this score were selected, and there was an 80% pass rate. Those who did not pass were mostly first-year students, and a small number of second-year students. Originally, this recruitment competition was a semi-observational competition, so the difficulty was not high. 1 second to remember: https://m Vipkanchu. VIP. The staff of the duel club would record the score of the newcomers and combine it with the performance of the newcomer competition to convert it into an internal score. After that, a lot of things would be handled according to this internal score. If the internal score reached a certain standard, the club would also give the corresponding resources to support the members as encouragement. After the score list was posted, the students gathered in front of the bulletin board. Just like after almost all exams, some were happy, and some were disappointed. The first-year students who failed were okay. After all, this was just a trial. The second-year students who failed were not so able to bear it. For them, this was undoubtedly a punishment. But when it came to competitions, there were wins and losses. There was no way. Dake and Anna squeezed together and looked up to see their names. Dake's score was naturally the highest. Although his performance in the third round was actually quite average, after all, his opponent was not very good, but the senior in charge of the evaluation still gave him face. In the end, after removing the highest score and the lowest score, and taking the average score, he got 10 points. As for the second place, it was naturally the third-year senior, Angelia. After that, Anna, Sarah, and AI Ma's rankings were also at the top. In addition, Doran from the Aristocratic Academy and White and Justin Wayne from the Knight Academy had also successfully passed the recruitment test. After careful calculation, there were actually 7 freshmen who had successfully joined the duel club in their first year. No matter which year it was, this was very outstanding. This was especially true for this year's Knights Institute and Aristocrats Institute. 3 students had been selected each, which made the students of the 2 academies very excited. Although Sarah was the only one who stood out in the Magic Engineering Academy, Saraswati's rating was high enough that it was acceptable. It was a pity that no one from the House of Fools had been selected. Dake and Anna high-fived each other and received a badge representing the duel club from the staff according to the instructions of Inia. It was a golden red badge with a double sword symbol in the middle and a crown, a knight's sword, a magus, and a tarot card engraved in the 4 areas divided by the double swords. The badge itself was a symbolic item. According to the rules, when participating in the competition, the students had to wear the badge. The other things, such as the statistics of the duel points and the classification of the duelists, were still recorded in the academy card and updated in real time. Dake injected a trace of magic into the badge and pressed it against his chest. The magic device attached to the bottom of the badge quickly took effect and firmly attached it to his uniform. Anna took a look and also took the badge. She put it on her chest and then smiled at Dake and asked, "Does it look good?" Dake reached out and pinched her cheek. It was soft and soft. "Of course it looks good." Luosi came over and said happily, "How about it? Do you want to go to Travelers Street to celebrate?" Anna immediately raised her hand. "I second that." Dake actually wanted to go back to the dormitory earlier, but he didn't want to be a wet blanket. So he went with them to Travelers Street and had dinner at the Waltz Music Restaurant. Listening to the elegant music and seeing Anna eating with her mouth full of oil, Dake couldn't help but smile. The duel club wasn't an orthodox club. Except for the occasional duel training, there were basically no club activities. And even if it was a duel training, they could choose whether or not they wanted to participate. As for the duel competition, The new students who joined the club could sign up for the competition on Saturday mornings starting from next week. But Dake had a lot of credits to spare, so he didn't want to do that yet. After dinner, the three of them strolled around the night market on Travelers Street. Companionship with laughter. Companionship with youth. The night was falling and the cold wind was blowing. Dake didn't know that White was also having dinner in the restaurant next to where the three of them were having dinner. White and C. Keat, who had just passed the assessment and didn't, had a completely different result with only 1 point difference. In order to celebrate White's victory and comfort C. Keat's failure, the church had specially changed tonight's gathering to a private room in the restaurant. A total of 16 plus 1 people gathered in the small private room. From celebrating to complaining to each other, it only took 10 minutes. Luo Boat was speechless as he looked at the 16 people, including White, complaining. He felt ashamed of his occasional thoughts of joining the church. In this space full of carbon dioxide, he was like an outsider who didn't fit in. He couldn't understand the thoughts of the church members. Even White felt strange to him. It was hard for him to imagine that Victor had such a side to him. After complaining, Victor and the others were enthusiastically designing a leather case for a sea creature called Sponge. What was a sponge? Cotton in the sea? Luo Boat was dumbfounded. However, this church actually had an official name now. It sounded normal. It was called Marine Biology Research Department. Do you guys like marine biology that much? Sad. The night was deep and the voices gradually died down. Dake and the other two returned to the aristocrat house's tower in satisfaction and separated on the second floor. Dake entered the bedroom and put down the bag full of food. Not only were there a lot of cut fruits, but there were also cooked food and drinks that suited the taste of the magic fairies. Today they were the biggest contributors. Dake certainly wouldn't forget to reward them. It was just that the total of 10 mouths was a bit too much. If it was another first-year student, they wouldn't be able to afford it. However, Dake didn't have anything else but a lot of credits. He took out Paradise from his card bag and projected a set of stone tables and chairs from the amusement park in the dormitory. He then began to summon the magic fairies one by one. By the time he summoned all 10 fairies, it was already some time later. He released the little devil from the curse cage, under the urging of the little devil, and then began to absorb Pride. The insect tree was in good condition under his careful care. Tonight's Pride had already accumulated a total of 5 points. Dark then poured the cat juice on each of the catnip plants and finally completed his task for the night. This made him greatly relieved, and then he lay down in the bathtub. In the cold winter, he immersed his body below the neck in hot water. The heat continued to seep into his skin and bones, and the exhaustion gradually disappeared. Through the door, he could hear the chattering of the magic fairies. He always felt that it was especially warm. A few hours later, Dake suddenly woke up. He found that he was no longer in the bathroom. He lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling for a long time to confirm that he didn't walk out of the bathroom. It seems that the magic fairies sent me back to the bed. Dake's heart warmed. He pulled his hands out of the quilt and slowly got up. Soaking in cooling water in winter would most likely cause a cold. Fortunately, the magic fairies were there. Otherwise, he would probably have to lie in the infirmary tomorrow morning. The situation was different from usual. Tonight, the bed was full of magic fairies lying on their backs. They seemed to be having a good time and sleeping soundly. Dake got out of bed quietly, pulled up the collar of his pajamas, and went to the balcony. It was already early in the morning, and the sky was slightly white. The castle was covered in snow-white frost, and there was a pleasant feeling of winter scenery. So nice. Dake sighed from the bottom of his heart. After a while, a ripple suddenly appeared in the sky. A door opened in the Shang-Molian barrier. A long and slender white dragon, shining with white light, passed through the door, its fine scales reflecting the light of the rainbow glass. Panduola Doragon rode on the dragon's spine. The wind blew her long hair, which was as white as snow. However, not long after he entered the academy, his head of smooth white hair began to recover its jet-black color from the roots. What a beautiful white dragon! Dake happened to see the white dragon fly in and couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. I wonder whose mount it is? The white dragon was different from most of the Western dragons in this world. It was an Eastern dragon that was similar to a snake. The unique soft beauty of the Eastern dragon was intoxicating and irresistible. Meow meow meow, okay, you're beautiful too. Dake bent down and picked up the catnip grass at his feet, and the corner of his mouth curved into a smile. A new day had arrived. The first weekend of the new semester. The first-year students who went through the Duel Club's recruitment were still in high spirits. They spread the news everywhere, and the temperature in the castle seemed to have risen because of it. After Dake gave the magic guide elves reading and writing homework, he took his bag and went to the library. Professor Nini gave him homework on the Spirit Flayer thesis, and he needed to go to the library to find the information. At about 10 in the morning, Dake finished writing the thesis. He didn't return to the dormitory, but continued to study in the library. From morning to night, many people came to the library one after another. Most of them left after checking the information, but a small number stayed behind. Dake was surprised to see White and Luo both. They were biting on their pens as they worked on their homework. However, Dake didn't pay too much attention to them. He quickly immersed himself in his own research. He still needed a lot of time to learn about zoo. The problem of fusion was more or less solved. It was only because Panduola didn't come back that the experiment of fusion was delayed. But this kind of thing couldn't be delayed. If Senior Sister still didn't come, he planned to refine it on his own. Even if he had to take a few more detours, there would still be meaning to it. Of course, it was also because he had enough credits that Dake dared to say this. He was already prepared to go to Traveler Street on Sunday morning to buy the materials for fusion. According to the price of 1,500 credits per set, he could buy 3 sets first. Anyway, he didn't have to worry about fusion. Even if he could make more, he was just afraid that he couldn't make even one. Suddenly, his vision was blocked. Doc raised his head abruptly and saw a face with a sweet smile. He was delighted. Senior, when did you come back? Panduola pulled out a chair and sat down opposite him. This morning. Dake looked her up and down and suddenly said, Did something good happen? Panduola's eyes narrowed into crescents. She raised her index finger and said cheerfully, It's a secret. It seemed that she was sincerely happy. Dake thought for a while and said, But I'm very curious. Panduola shook her head slightly. Curiosity won't do. Well, now is not the time. I'll tell you when it's time. How is it? I heard that you did something big again? It's not a big deal. Dake didn't ask any more questions. I just encountered some danger in the secret passage. Both of them lowered their voices as much as possible to not affect the people in the reading room. Dake told her about the secret room, the treasure, and the vampire in detail. Panduola also revealed some of her schedule during the holidays. After the Christmas ball, she left the Shangmalian. After that, she didn't stop at any place. She rode on her magic ferry and rushed to her birthplace, the Forest of Exile. The Forest of Exile? Dake raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but raise his voice. Panduola rested her chin on her hand and looked into the distance as if she was reminiscing. It's a cursed and forgotten land. People die one by one and disappear one by one. Whether it's those who are punished or those who are abandoned, they can't escape the curse of death. Her understatement revealed a trace of unconcealable despair. To this day, Panduola was grateful to Headmaster Aerti for bringing her out of that place. She was the only living person in the Forest of Exile. When she was young, there were people in the Forest of Exile. They taught her language and how to hunt. Then, they died one by one, leaving behind tombs made of stones. 3 years after the war, the Forest of Exile was completely forgotten and no one was sent in. It wasn't until Headmaster Aerti suddenly appeared in front of her that she realized that there was still a world outside. 2 in 1 4000. Chapter 249. Dake had already sensed that Panduola's childhood wouldn't be smooth sailing, but he didn't expect it to be this difficult. As the name implied, the Forest of Exile was a place where sinners were exiled. Although it was abandoned after the war, its existence hadn't been forgotten. It was just that there was a curse in that place, so no one was willing to go near it. The fact that Senior Sister Pandora was able to walk out of the exiled forest alive was truly a blessing in disguise. As for why she grew up in the Forest of Exile, Dake didn't want to delve into it. During the war, order was chaotic, and not all of the people sent to the Forest of Exile were sinners. A large portion of them were sinners, who couldn't be punished. Another portion were innocent family members, and some were even accused of crimes that weren't warranted. And according to Panduola's age, she should have been sent there not long after she was born. Website https://m Vipkanchu. VIP. Since Headmaster A had brought her out, it explained a lot. Dake took a deep breath and tried his best to keep his expression neutral. On Christmas Eve, he didn't expect Panduola to leave school to visit a grave. Christmas was supposed to be a day for family reunions, but she could only mourn the dead. Don't be like this. Senior Sister Pandora suddenly burst into laughter. I'm not that weak. Also, she raised her index finger to her lips again and shook her head slightly. I can't say any more, I have to keep it a secret. Dake was confused, but the muscles on his face relaxed. He said, Senior, since you're back. Panduola smiled. Fusion, right? Tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, is that okay? Dake's face lit up. Of course. Then, the two of them chatted in low voices. When she heard that Dake had successfully joined the duel club, Panduola slapped her forehead and sighed. I forgot about that. Congratulations. Dake said, That sounds insincere. After all, it's not that difficult. Panduola said with a smile, then stood up and said, All right, I still have some things to do tonight, so I'll head back first. See you tomorrow. Dake waved his hand. See you tomorrow. Seeing Panduola's back gradually disappear from the entrance of the reading room, Dake suddenly realized something. Senior Panduola, did you come here to look for me? But after thinking for a moment, he felt that something was wrong. She must have glanced over here when she was looking for Ms. Bella. After all, she couldn't have predicted that I would be here. Dake propped up his chin and analyzed rationally. However, he didn't notice that White, who was also in the reading room, had been peeping at him for a long time. White had been peeking at Panduola ever since he came in, but she didn't look directly at him because she didn't want to be noticed. The tip of the pen had not moved for a long time. Luo Boat, who was sitting across from him, was like a sponge, crazily absorbing the knowledge, even though the knowledge in the book was pitifully little. However, he was still gradually immersed in it, so much so that he didn't notice White's pause. He never thought that he would have such a thirst for knowledge one day. But it felt good. The next morning, Dake went to Traveler's Street early in the morning for the experiment in the afternoon. It took him a long time to buy a total of 3 sets of fusion materials. He had been researching fusion for a long time, and this was the time to test the results. Before 2 p.m., Dake brought the materials, notes, and the key to the laboratory and went to the library ahead of time. Panduola was happily chatting with Ms. Bella. When she saw him appear at the door, she lowered her head and smiled at Ms. Bella before coming out from behind the counter. Let's go. Okay. The two looked at each other and smiled. Nothing needed to be said. But after entering the laboratory, the relaxed atmosphere suddenly disappeared. The experiment began. Dake already had the experience of failure once, and he didn't expect that the fusion refinement would succeed that day. The fusion magic card itself was a kind of magic card that was full of uncertainties. The refinement process was the same. Even if one thought that it was perfect, there would often be a lot of uncertainties when it came to actual practice. In the refinement of the fusion magic card, luck played a big role. Repeated experiments and refinement would have a chance of success. Let's test the magic spell first. Panduola flipped open Dake's notes and quickly looked through them. Dake's analysis of various problems was very detailed, and one wouldn't feel that this was a first-year student's notebook at all. Especially the compilation of the magic spell, it seemed to be more complete than the last time. But just seemed was far from enough. During the entire experiment process, Panduola only gave some pointers at critical moments, and Dake did the rest by himself. After spending about half an hour, Dake completed the test of the fusion magic spell, and according to the values of various indicators, he finally obtained a magic spell that was perfectly compatible with his current state. Then, he began the refinement process. The essence of fusion was to use 2 or more magic fairies as the core material to refine a brand new magic fairy on the spot. The difference from the refinement of a real magic fairy was that this process was temporary, reversible, and unstable. This could avoid many difficult problems. Using the fusion card required a huge amount of magic power, and ordinary mage trainers didn't have the luxury to use fusion. Doc took out the first set of materials, opened them, and dealt with them separately. Then, he put them away according to their categories. If the first experiment failed, those unused materials could be used in the next round. Being hardworking and thrifty was a good habit. 3:22 in the afternoon. Due to the sudden conflict between 2 materials, everything went down the drain. The materials that were fused with the magic card reacted to each other, and a large amount of dark green foam bubbled out and exploded with a bang. The explosion wasn't strong, and Dake was still calm. A dragon maiden in a white battle skirt blocked in front of him in time and used her sure kill skill, Shield of Light, to seal the green foam that exploded. Dake turned around and asked, "Senior, what's the problem this time?" Panduola waved the magic card to recall Dragon Maiden, and said, "There's a high probability that there's a problem with the materials themselves. The growth, harvesting, refining, and preservation of materials all involve many elements, and some elements that can't be detected at all often lead to the failure of experiments. This is very normal." Dake nodded, and began to clean up the remains. Since it wasn't his problem, he could continue with the second experiment. It was just a pity that the 1,500 credit materials were wasted, and his heart ached. 4:42 in the afternoon. The second experiment also failed. The reason was a mistake in the operation, and the magic vibrated too quickly, causing a mutation before the fusion of the materials stabilized. Dake reflected on himself for 5 minutes, took a deep breath, and resolutely began the third experiment. Failure wasn't scary. What was scary was not being able to find the reason for the failure. The third experiment. The goddess of luck finally crawled under the feet of the demon god. The process was very smooth from the beginning to the end. Dake used tweezers to carefully pick up the formed magic card from the black mucus, and put it under the tap to rinse it clean. A magic card that emitted a faint halo was gradually exposed to the air. "It's a success." The moment he saw the card clearly, Dake was pleasantly surprised. The surface of this magic card was shockingly the same as the Pisces diagram in the records. Card name, Fusion. Type, Magic card. Effect, Fusion. Bliss +1. Dake quickly held back his laughter. The success of Fusion was very significant to him, and almost instantly, it raised his upper limit to an unimaginable level. If he had a fusion card when he encountered the vampire in the secret passage, perhaps he wouldn't have fallen into a difficult battle. Of course, the premise was that the effect of fusion was as he expected, which was to promote the integration of the Diru beast and the Diru beast. If it wasn't for Senior Panduola by his side, he would have definitely rushed back to the dormitory to try it. "Senior." Dake turned around. Panduola stretched out her slender white fingers and smiled lightly. "Let me see." Dake solemnly handed the fusion magic card to her. Her fingertips touched slightly, and a trace of coldness seeped into her. Panduola took the fusion magic card, and carefully looked at it. "Sure enough, the pattern on the card is slightly different from mine." Dake asked, "Is this caused by the difference in the curse?" Panduola nodded. "Most of the reason is because of this. The higher the level of the magic card, the deeper the personal imprint. Even if you don't use Thinking Lock, you don't have to worry about it being stolen." As she spoke, she injected a little bit of magic. However, after the magic circled around, the fusion card did not react at all. Panduola continued, "This fusion card seems to have been refined at first glance, but I can't be sure whether it's useful or not. You can go and do an experiment first, and tell me the results tomorrow afternoon." "Well, I'll still be a librarian in the library." Dake took back the fusion card, and said sincerely, "Thank you, Senior." After cleaning up the laboratory, Dake quickly said goodbye to his senior. Of course, he knew that she said that on purpose to make him return to the experiment as soon as possible, and not to force him to treat her to a meal. As for gratitude, wasn't there a tomorrow? At this time, Dake was not in the mood to think about it. The success of an experiment was always exciting, not to mention that it was a high-level card like fusion. In theory, without the help of Senior Panduola, he was afraid that he would only be able to successfully refine this magic card when he was in 3rd or 4th grade. Of course, his own talent and hard work were also indispensable. Ordinary people could not learn the magic language by themselves. 3,000 words. The artist has been found. Oh. Chapter 250. When Dake returned to the dormitory, it was already 6 o'clock in the evening. The magic guide elves who had finished their homework were indulging in their own entertainment. Only the lovely catnip greeted him at the door every day. He bent down and picked up the cat grass along with the small flower pot. He used the usual method to rub the soft meat under its neck. The Dilu beast, which was also a cat, was sitting on the top of the cat tree. It was using a children's book to hide the twitching of its eyes. "Dilu beast, come here." Dake suddenly waved at it. It couldn't help but show a happy expression. But the next moment, it tightly closed its mouth. Then it put down the book and said, "What's the matter?" Dake opened his mouth and said, "There's a small experiment." "Pa." The little demonic beast that was practicing standing on one leg on the desk accidentally dropped the pen on the table. It remembered the website. Vipkanchu. 6. It suddenly stiffened and turned to the balcony like a rusty machine. Then it opened its wings. "Little devil beast, come over here for a bit." Oh. It was an experiment. The magic guide elves more or less knew what Dake's experiment was about. Suddenly, their spirits were doubled. They put down their entertainment and jumped around. Dake put down his bag and sat down on the bed. Then he put the cat grass on his knees. The Dilu beast glanced at the cat grass and stood half a meter away from him. She didn't reject the experiment like the little monster. Instead, she was looking forward to it. Because the master's experiment could always increase the intelligence and strength of the magic guide elves. As for the temporary change in personality, there was always a price to pay. The Dilu beast's thoughts were relatively mature. And a long time ago, when she tried Bliss 3 Moon, she felt a new power explode in her body. If that power could take shape, she wouldn't have been suppressed by a mere gorilla in the duel 2 days ago. It raised its hands and its chin slightly, waiting for its master's instructions. Hua! The little monster folded its wings and landed on the ground. It covered its eyes with its wings and secretly glanced at Dake, guessing what kind of experiment would be tonight. Dake looked at the different reactions of the 2 magic guide elves and couldn't help but smile. Then, he took out a Bliss 3 and a Fusion from his card pack. Bliss 3 and Bliss 3 Moon were the same. They could make the little monster evolve into a Dilu beast, but Bliss 3 was controllable. When the Dilu beast saw the Extreme Bliss 3, its heart skipped a beat. It realized that its time was coming. However, the fusion that it had never seen before made it feel wary. Let's start with the little demon beasts. Dark looked at the little fiendish magical beast and smiled. The little demonic beast's expression tensed up. It took a step back and suddenly said, 3. Dakes's and then said Stanzas dark. 1. The little demonic beast, all right, 1 flower it is. Then, it closed its eyes and lay down on the carpet, completely giving up on struggling. Dake pursed his lips and activated Bliss 3. Magical summoning. The moment the summoning was successful, a pink glow was released from the surface of Bliss 3. The Dilu beasts subconsciously raised their hands to cover their eyes, and the surrounding magic guide fairies did the same. However, the pink light still shone on their bodies, causing their emotions to fluctuate slightly, and their faces to turn red. As the center of the pink light, the little devil monster's forehead lit up with the bliss emblem. It wriggled a little, and its body turned into light under the effect of Bliss 3. Its entire form began to transform into a cat. Meow, heart suit. Omega. A black cat that looked exactly like the Dilu beast appeared in front of Dake. The Dilu beast only glanced at him once before it revealed a disgusted expression. It even took a step to the side, as if it was trying to get away from something stinky. Immediately after, the little demonic beast that had evolved into a black Duro beast climbed up from the carpet in a methodical manner. First, it touched its body, then waved its hand in front of its eyes and muttered, "I have hands now." Then, caught off guard, the black cat jumped up with a meow. Dake only saw a black shadow flash before his eyes, and he was already on the ground. Meow. The catnip plant on his knee jumped up in fright. The Dilu beast looked at the shameless black cat and coldly snorted. All of the magic guide fairies were stirred. Dake lay on the bed and sighed. A cat's tongue was really cold. Then he reached out and seized the beast by the armpits and pulled it away from his face. Meow! The Heidi Road beast licked its lips and stretched out its 2 paws to grab Dake's wrist. It was soft. "All right, listen to me." Dake patted its head and put it beside the bed, standing side by side with the Dilu beast. Although the black and white cats looked the same, their expressions and temperaments were completely different. The Dilu beast was sacred and inviolable. The Heidi Road beast was evil and flirtatious. Light and darkness. Pride and bliss. Could these two really be fused? It's useless to think so much. Let's experiment. Dake placed the fusion card in his palm and suddenly injected magic. At that moment, the fusion card was triggered. The black and white fish on the card moved and slowly swam. The usage of the fusion card was different from ordinary magic cards. In addition to the necessary summoning technique, it also needed to supplement a large amount of magic. How to inject a large and stable amount of magic in a short period of time was actually a very difficult skill. Of course, he wasn't in a hurry now. He just needed to slowly inject magic. When the magic was injected to a certain extent, the black and white fish gently shook their tails and suddenly swam out of the card and grew with the wind. The white fish flew toward the Dilu beast. The black fish flew toward the Heidi Road beast. They circled around the 2 magic fairies. Naturally, the 2 magic fairies turned into light along with the black and white fish. Riding on the fish, they converged in the air and merged into one like a Tai Chi, forming a huge and mysterious magic array. Then, a brand new magic fairy slowly sat up in the magic array. It was just like what was recorded before. It was a slender human figure with fluffy cat ears and 2 slender tails. When its appearance became clear, Dake suddenly realized that it was more like a leopard than a cat. In other words, it was a leopard-cat-human figure. The long pink hair that she inherited from Bliss made her look more feminine. Half of her face was covered by a light purple veil, and the cool outfit exposed a large part of her belly without fur. Her soft and delicate skin shone with a faint luster. Its round breasts were wrapped in tadpole-shaped pink cups. It was soft and full. The chi tattoo branded on its belly made it look wild. The pearls, gems, and gold rings all over its body gave it a symbol of wealth. This was the beast-shaped digital beast known as the cat goddess, the embodiment of flirtatious and charming. Dake read the information from the magic card while carefully observing the fused digital beast. Although it already had a human figure, it still retained a lot of leopard-cat characteristics. Its slender waist and flashy outfit made it look like a frivolous dancer. In fact, it did have a flashy personality. It was good at using the gems on its body and the bewitching glowing contact lenses to confuse the enemy and then manipulate the opponent as it pleased. Its body was soft as if it had no bones. It could be seen at a glance that it had an outstanding cat-like agility. Its hands and feet that retained the characteristics of a beast were full of strength. The claws on both hands were sharp enough to cut through gold and iron. Card name, Basti Beast. Type, Fairy card. Level, Race, Subhuman. Attribute, Dark. Magic power, 3500. Attack, 3400. Defense, 2700. Ultimate skill, Chaos, Vampire's Dance. This digital beast was based on the cat-faced goddess in Egyptian mythology. It combined the two sides of light and darkness. It was a complete digital beast. The ultimate skill was Chaos, which used a flirtatious and charming belly dance to confuse and manipulate the enemy. There was also Vampire's Dance, which approached the opponent while dancing and sucked away every drop of blood in the opponent's body. It was a 7-star magic fairy with a wide range of control skills and a gorgeous wide range of attack skills. Its magic power and attack exceeded 3,000. A gold card with only 2 ultimate skills. Looking at the golden halo on the fusion magic card that temporarily carried the Basti Beast, Dake had a thought. After experiencing the gold card, Fantasy Beast, changeable monster, with only 2 skills, Dake was no longer overly surprised. The existing grading of magic cards could only be said to be a popular standard. There were always special magic fairies that exceeded the standard. Just from the information alone, this Basti Beast was worthy of being a gold card. Casting a mind control skill on a person was already extremely precious, not to mention an area of effect control skill. As long as it successfully danced on the field, any magic fairy with a weak will would be captivated by its endless charm. He couldn't be more satisfied. Dake looked at the Basti Beast that slowly stood up with a face full of joy. The Bliss +1 that floated in front of his eyes made him realize that the flower card that could absorb bliss was still in the environment. Hello, my dear master. The Basti Beast, which had merged the will of the little devil and the Delu Beast, opened its eyes wide the moment it woke up. Its gentle eyes overflowed with watery desire. It retracted the horrifying claws on its hands and turned them into a large round pad of meat. Then, it reached out its greedy hand to its master. Dake also reached out his hand in response. The Basti Beast unconsciously put its palm in his palm. The body heat from the contact of the palms made the Basti Beast uncontrollably stick out its tongue and lick the corner of its lips. It felt thirst. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.